obstacle so unpredictable here on the SNL network.
Yes, that is right. Welcome everybody on in to the Saturday Night Network, and happy Labor Day to all those who are celebrating in North America and enjoying their long weekend. We have something very fun for you to wrap up the long weekend, which is another one of our draft podcasts. We've been doing those for the last few years on some long weekends, including the Ultimate Episode Draft, where we pick sketches from the history of the show. Last time out that we did this, we picked underrated cast members who've been on for 2 seasons or less, to give them another shot on the show. So much fun that we get to have here on a version of our Superfan Takeover podcast, where we put together some of the best SNL minds from our community to draft. And today we are doing a seasons draft. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time, and I'm excited to do it with some great competitors. So let me bring them in. First up, it is the great Victoria Franso. Victoria, how are you doing?
I'm excited. This is baby's first draft, so I'm definitely a rookie, but I'm out for the best.
All right. Well, can't wait to see how you do in this one. Up next, someone who is a veteran, not just on drafts, but in life, Bill Kenney. Bill, how are you doing?
Wow, that took less. I had the under on that one, John. I'm doing great. So happy to be back. Have missed all of you so much. Summer's been long, and God only knows the next time we're going to have something to talk about new. So this is great. Love talking about this.
Yeah, this will be fun, Bill. Happy to have you on. And of course, very happy to have on Rebecca North as well. Rebecca, how are you doing?
Good. I miss you guys. This has been so long, and I wasn't able to come to the last draft, so I'm able to come back now. And welcome, Victoria, to the draft game.
Yeah, it should be exciting. You're always a great competitor. Rebecca actually won our season 48 cast draft, so she will be picking the order for the season 49 cast draft whenever that does come around. So stay tuned for that one later down the road. This is going to be very exciting. We have the legendary Andrew Dick from That Week in SNL on the podcast with us to draft seasons. You know he's going to bring some hot takes. So Andrew, how are you doing?
What a get. Me again. Doing great. I am also baby at draft. So I'm going to be feeling it out as we go. But, I'm going to be bringing my hot takes. I got my favorite seasons, so I'm ready to snatch them up.
All right, that is exciting. Can't wait to see which seasons we're going to be talking about that you are going to pick. The bearded man also joins us as well on the show. That is the magical Mr. Haynes. Haynes, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing awesome. I'm very much looking forward to this draft. I know that people have been seeing PDD on tour this summer. The show was amazing. I see a pretty good amount of stand-up. It's rare that I'm laughing out loud like every second of a show. Like, really even doesn't happen with even the best stand-up comics most of the time. I mean, they killed it's just like every sketch is murder. I don't know why. Maybe Sammy said they were not selling tickets in Durham. Maybe that's why all their friends and family were there. But I did get to say what's up to Tim Herlihy, who wrote, maybe we're going to pull some sketches that he wrote tonight. So that was an awesome experience, and I'm very excited for this draft. And like everyone said, it's just nice to be back with everybody.
For sure. So many of us have seen PDD this summer. It's just a PDD summer. Very cool. But
I so wanted to. I forgot about it. I would have been at that Durham show.
All right, well, you'll have to go next time. That would be great. Yeah, they are really awesome. So great job to their tour. Last but not least, we have to bring in the regular host of our Superfan Takeovers, and that is the great Sammy Kay. Sammy, how are you doing?
John, everybody, I'm doing super well tonight. These drafts are always a lot of fun to have some fresh faces. Also got to see PDD this summer with Victoria. I'm actually rocking my PDD shirt. So, nice. Maybe we'll talk about them a little later in the episode, but I've never won one of these. And, am I confident that tonight's going to be the night? I'm not so sure, but, I guess we'll see what happens.
Well, it's not up to us. It's up to the fans. So you get to vote on which team puts together the best group of seasons. And this is how the show will work. So we are going to pick a season, one of the 48 seasons from the history of SNL. Obviously, if you've seen the entire run, this is a great podcast for you because you have all the information. And if you haven't, maybe you can learn something about the seasons. But basically, once a season is selected, it can no longer be selected draft style. We're going to go through and each person is going to select a season. We're going to go snake style, so go all the way through and then backwards. to do 7 times. And you may be saying to yourself, okay, well, there's not 49 seasons of the show. Well, there is a little bit of a twist here. So I'm going to explain the rules, how this is going to work. Last time out, we did the cast draft where we pick cast members who are on for 2 seasons or left. I actually won that draft, my first draft that I won here. So I get to determine the draft order this time. Except I'm going to put an offer out for anyone on the podcast now. If you would like to pick your spot in the draft, you will get 6 picks tonight. So if you are confident where you want to pick, you will get 6 seasons. So I'm going to ask for volunteers. If nobody volunteers, I'm going to randomize it and pick the person. So does anybody know where they want to pick in the draft, which spot in the order? And if so, you will get 6 instead of 7 seasons.
This feels like a trick.
It doesn't. Randomize it.
I don't.
Yeah.
John's a great person, but I don't trust him.
No, that's fine, because if you're like, oh,
kidding.
if you know, like, okay, I want to pick at the turn, I want to pick, the 7, 8 turn, so I know I can get that seasons, it's fine. You feel confident. You can choose to do that. Otherwise, we're going to completely randomize it, okay? So nobody else?
I say go random. Yeah,
I
go
like
random.
chaos.
Let's go
so
random.
let's go with the chaos pick.
Okay.
That way we know it's not rigged.
Okay, no problem. All right,
Trust
so
issues.
Could still be rigged.
absolutely. Okay. In real time, pausing the podcast just to do the list randomizer. Going to take 2 seconds. Going to get that done, and then I'm going to come back and reveal the results. So we will be right back, and I will let you know who got that. All right, so we have randomized the order, and the top name on the board, who is only going to be picking 6 seasons, will be Andrew Dick. So Andrew, where would you like to pick between spots 1 and 7 on the draft order?
Is there any other reason to go not 1?
Yeah, because on the turn is good. Because then if you pick 1, then you're also picking like 14 or 13, whatever that pick would be.
It's like a snake draft. So, it'll go around. And then you'll pick 2. And then go
I'll
back.
go first.
So basically, Andrew, if you pick first, we're going to go through everybody, and then it's going to go all the way back to you. So you would have to wait for your second round. So if you have a
I
a
won
season
the
you really
cast
want.
draft at that, like the corner one. So that would be like the 7th pick here. So you get 7 and 8 also. That was my position when I won. So
Intriguing. I'll go 3rd.
Okay. Andrew is going to pick 3rd. So in the last round, Andrew will not have a pick, but he is starting off 3rd. I will pick the rest of the draft order. Okay. Going first will be Victoria. I'm going to put Victoria first. Haynes doesn't like to pick near the end. He always picks near the end. I know him and Haskell do. So I'm going to put Haynes 2nd. Okay. I'm going to put me 3rd.
Wait, I'm 3rd. You're 4th.
Sorry, 4th. Sorry, Andrew's 3rd. I am 4th. I'm going to put Sammy 5th. And then, Rebecca, do you want the turn or do you want the 6th spot?
I'll take the turn.
Okay. So.
After I just gassed it up so much as a position, I have to.
Okay. So, Victoria is going to go first. Then it's going to be Haynes. Then Andrew. Then myself. Sammy, Bill, and Rebecca. That is the draft order. Okay. Victoria, you are on the clock.
Goodness.
You can pick any one of the 48 seasons. Tell us why you're going to go with that one for the first overall pick.
Okay, so I was between 2 as my first, but I'm very confident that I should go with season 18, years 1992 to 1993. First and foremost, there was a stellar cast. This cast kind of changed the DNA of SNL at their point. I'm talking Dana Carvey, Chris Farley, Phil Hartman, Mike Myers, Kevin Nealon, Chris Rock, just to name a few, with featured players, Detroit's own Tim Meadows, Adam Sandler, and David Spade. First and foremost, this season was the premiere of the iconic, memorable, hard to forget, never forget. Everyone knows it. Your grandkids know it. They're not even born yet. Matt Foley, motivational speaker. And that alone is enough for me to rank it at the top. But in addition to Matt Foley, and if there's an off chance that you don't know who or what that is, that's Living in a Van Down by the River. We also got some great sketches like Canteen Boy and Gap Girls, and that's why there's so much more iconic behavior in that season. But because I'm on a time limit, I'll keep it short and sweet.
Okay, off the board first, season 18, the 92-93 season. This is a very interesting first pick. Let me head over to Bill Kenney on this one. Bill, what do you think about Victoria kicking off the draft with season 18?
Well, this will be a sports reference, of course. There's no wrong answers in the first round of a draft in football or in SNL, and 18 is definitely up there. I would not have gone that. I think there are 3 seasons that are like other echelon that would go in the first 3 picks. But everything that Victoria mentioned, plus you've got the Clinton McDonald sketch. You've got You Like It the Juice. This we're right in that sweet spot before the kind of denigration of this cast, what we saw in a couple of upcoming seasons after this. So I think this is a good pick. Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting season. Obviously, very well known for all of the things that we discussed, but including also Dana Carvey leaving mid-season. That was a big moment in season 18. The Sinead O'Connor ripping up the picture of the Pope. That was a big moment for that season as well, that a lot of people know that for. So if you're thinking back to season 18. So very interesting pick here by Victoria to kick off the draft. Haynes, over to you for pick number 2. Haynes, would you have gone season 18 if you had the first overall pick, or is your top pick still on the board?
My top pick is still on the board. Not for
All
long. So obviously, we're thinking about seasons that we could show to folks to get them into SNL or explain, really give them an idea of what SNL is at its essence. So I am going with a very classic season. I'm going with season 3.
Son of a bitch.
So this is an awesome season that Andrew Dick will painfully watch disappear right before his eyes.
I hate this.
We've got the Fastrunk brothers, dancing around and showing off their pants. We've got Nick Winters singing Star Wars. This is SNL at its core. I feel like this is a pretty strong pick. I'm glad that I was able to get it in the number 2 spot.
Yeah, for sure. This is a GOAT season. Like, most people know this as potentially the greatest season in the history of the show. Obviously, has the episode that people talk about as potentially being the greatest episode in the history of the show, the Steve Martin Blues Brothers episode. And in addition to that, the Anyone Can Host competition. It is an extremely iconic season. Andrew, because you had such a big reaction for it, to you, why is it such a great pick here?
I think it's just the best of the original cast. It's right before the blow to season 4 and 5 come around. But yeah, you got the Grodin episode is also one of my favorites. Robert Klein with the Atomic Lobsters. Steve Martin hosts 3 times, and Buck Henry twice. Like, it is the defining early season for the show, I believe, for sure. So
yeah, it's absolutely great choice here. So Andrew, I guess you would have chosen to go and pick second if you could go back in time, but since you can't, since you have the third pick, who would you like to take, or which season would you like to take third overall?
Well, struggling to choose which one of these ones that I wanted to pick. Because this was right at the height of when, I was first initially watching the show, but I'm going to go with season 24, which, what year is that? 98 to 99. So you get Sands, Fallon, and Parnell coming in. And I think everybody else is just working at the height of their powers, Anna Gasteyer and Will Ferrell and Sherry O'Terry. Everybody's like cooking. I'm a big fan. I love me some Colin Quinn. So, you still got Colin in there, and I think just a lot of just classic episodes. Cameron Diaz, Smashing Pumpkins. Oh boy, Gwyneth Paltrow, Brendan Fraser, with Busta Rhymes and the Roots. All sorts of great stuff. And right before, I think I chose this one over 25 is just because it's still more locked in the 90s than, 25 kind of starts spilling off into the 2000s, where you got Cisco doing like the thong song and stuff, and like it feels like the show is starting to get into a little bit more pop cultural focus that it would have the years afterwards. So I think much like season 3, season 24 is that era cooking at its finest.
Very interesting. Yeah, I didn't expect this. I do have 24 pretty high up on my board, but I didn't necessarily expect this because that era is largely not considered one of the golden eras. But this may be the peak of that particular era. So this is a good pick in my opinion. Sammy, would love to know from you. Andrew going with season 24 here, third overall. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely not one that I expected to be a first round pick, but certainly, a good choice. I mean, you have a bunch of, the classic Celebrity Jeopardy sketches from that season. I believe Ray Romano hosted that year, and that's like a pretty memorable episode. And yeah, I mean, you have 3 kind of, fresh faces entering the cast with, a lot of these veterans who've been kind of, at this point, they're veterans, a couple years into their run after that major transition in the mid 90s. So I think it's definitely an interesting pick.
Yeah, also love that SMG and Backstreet Boys episode to to finish that season. It's a great episode.
Put that one in your back pocket, John.
For sure. All right. Well, number 4 here. So I still have some seasons that are right at the top of my board. So I'm excited because I wonder if any will come back to me. There's a couple that I'm deciding between. One is probably more of my favorite season, and one which I do think is personally, I think this could be the greatest season in the history of the show. Time. It's been enough time that I think we could look back and talk about why it is. And that is season 34 of the show I'm going to go with here. Season 34 has everything. The cast is so awesome in the middle of that golden era between, Bill and Andy and Kristen, Forte, Fred, everybody. They're hitting on all cylinders. We kick off the season with the Sarah Palin and Amy Poehler election stuff. We get pregnant Amy throughout that, fall. We get the debut of Bobby Moynihan on the show, who's absolutely fantastic. We also get Goodnight Saigon to end the season. And I honestly think going back and watching all of those episodes, there's really not that many bad ones. I mean, I'm looking through, there's a lot of really, really strong episodes here. I think the batting average for the episodes in this season is extremely high. There may be some other seasons with more iconic moments, but I think this still has a mix of everything I look for in a season. And I just think, the other sketches that I really like from this one, including the Paul Rudd, Beyonce, we're the dancers. We talked about that with Bobby Moynihan, the Justin Timberlake and Ciara episode where we get Mother Lover. There's a lot of really fun things here. So for me, season 34 is one of the peaks of my prime of watching SNL, and that's why I chose it. Victoria, I did see you make a face when I chose it. So was this high up on your board?
Yes, it was. I mean, okay. For all the reasons, very upset here. No, for all the reasons you said, but just to reiterate, this cast was a phenomenal cast. Everyone knows Fred Armisen, everyone knows Daryl Hammond, everyone knows Amy Poehler, Will Forte, Hader, Kristen Wiig, Jason Sudeikis, Andy Samberg, and it was during such a historical time in our country for positive reasons. We were electing our first Black president, and we saw them on the show as well. And it was a turning point. And I think for me personally, as I was going through my list, a lot of 30s were popping up, seasons in the 30 decade, if you will. And this one stood out to me just because they knew exactly what to do with the content being given to them, the content being the news. And it was just, you couldn't have asked for anything better. So this was a creme de la creme pick, John.
Thank you.
And honestly, Mother Lover is a banger to this day. It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah. I really felt in real time, it was event viewing television every single week. Can't right now. But yeah, season 33 for me was an interesting one, which I'm sure we'll talk about, which gets cut short and ultimately leads us to, I believe, the greatest season in that golden era. So that's why I chose it. That's my first pick off the board here. Sammy, over to you for the 5th pick in the first round of the draft.
Oh, God. I mean, listen, I was going to pick season 34. I mean, I can't hide it. So
Yep.
now I'm in this like very interesting predicament where I kind of have two avenues of where to go. These are both two very high on my board, but I feel like, I said at the beginning of this draft, I haven't won any of these, and maybe it's because I always go with my heart over my head. But I think I'm going to have to go with my heart again. I got to be true to myself. I'm picking season 32. I feel like a lot of the things that Jon said can apply to this season as well. I mean, you have, just like a dynamite cast, along with the addition of, Amy Poehler and Maya Rudolph, who are still there at the time. So as far as like, a female presence on the show between like the three of them, along with Kristen Wiig, is really great. And yeah, I mean, you just have these people kind of, finding their footing, but, really starting to gel as a cast. You have like just iconic SNL digital shorts. I mean, we just talked about how Mother Lover is a banger, but Dick in a Box is what really started it all. In that series of digital short sketches, you have the Platinum Lounge sketch, which is, a very fun take on the Five Timers Club with Steve Martin and Alec Baldwin. The Peyton Manning episode is a classic, and you have Seth and Amy, kind of just starting out at Update, and I think they're just such a fun pair at the desk. So, as much as I wanted 34, I'm also very happy that I was able to nab season 32.
Yeah, this is a great pick here. This was like right next to that on my board. I mean, season 32 is my personal favorite season, and the fact that every single cast member has hosted from that season, or is Keenan and still on the show, or is Daryl Hammond and the announcer, adds to the fact of how iconic it is. And there's just some huge moments there as well. I do think over the last few years, I've come around on the fact that I think season 34 may be slightly higher in quality, but season 32 is just such a solid pick here. Rebecca, what do you think about Sammy going with season 32? Was that high up on your board?
I thought I was able to get away with this one because, Jon, when you were talking about season 34 and all the positives, I was like, this is season 32 in my mind. And I really thought in these next two, I was hoping that neither one of you would pick this. But yeah, this is an all-time for me. This is right when I started being able to like understand the show, but was still home with my parents on Saturday nights and watching it. So it kind of introduced me way back when, and is one of the few seasons I've actually had the chance to go back and rewatch during like COVID time. So that was an awesome pick, Sammy. I'm so mad you took that.
All right, well, we'll see where you will go. But first, we have to go to Bill Kenney with the 6th pick in the draft here. I feel like I know where you're going to go, Bill, but I'm curious if you're going to do it. So, Bill, over to you.
Jon, I'm going to take the tact that you are. I'm not going to go with my favorite all-time season, even though I think it's pretty close to the one I'm about to pick. But by the time this season happened, the second golden era was kind of hitting its stride. It was after a strike season, ironically enough, and we were starting to see how great this cast really was together. And of course, I'm talking about season 14, 1988-89. You've got the already gelling cast of Phil and Jan and Dana, etc. You've got Dennis behind the Weekend Update desk, and then you add Mike Myers to the mix, and he just comes out of the gate like firing on all cylinders, debuting Wayne's World and Dieter. But you also have Toonces. You've got The Anal Retentive Chef, Nude Beach, which is still an all-time classic for a lot of different reasons, and Love is a Dream. We've got the Schiller classic that season as well. So it's my all-time favorite cast, but that's not why I'm going with it. I think this is one of the 3 most important / greatest seasons in the history of the show. So I'm going with 14.
Yep, totally agree with that. I think this is a great pick here. Mike Myers, Ben Stiller come on for this season. We talked about Ben Stiller a little bit on our last draft as well. I really think there's no bad episodes in season 14. It's just it's like such an interesting season to take a look at. I think it has such a high batting average, and definitely also remembered for that Steve Martin episode at the end of the year where Gilda had passed that day, and we get all that dancing in the dark and stuff like that. It's just a very, very iconic season in the history of the show. Haynes, would love to know how you feel about season 14 going here to Bill.
Yeah, that's a great pick. I figured it would be going, right near the top. I had it, right near the top. If I was in Bill's spot, I would be taking it right now. It's an amazing season for all the reasons you said. and of course the really popular Citywide Change Bank, and just obviously you mentioned Toonses, and just so many great sketches. Basically, yeah, I could just echo everything you said. It's a top-notch season of all time. So fantastic pick. Wouldn't expect anything less from Mr. Kenney.
Okay, Rebecca, you are going to finish up the first round of the draft, and then you will have the first pick in the second round. So start with your first pick.
Okay, my first pick is I'm really toying between two here, but I guess I have both. I'll lead. I'm gonna add this in because I want it to be a first round pick, although I do think it should be a second round pick, and then vice versa for my second round pick. But I'm gonna go with season 27 with the cast of this was like Will Ferrell's season. I mean, Will Ferrell is one of the reasons that I got drawn into it. It was much like the Chris Farley seasons earlier on, where he kind of dominated, but then also worked so well with everyone to bring out the best. I feel like going back and watching season 27, like the Lovers sketch and Patriotic Shorts and all those that the cast could barely get through this themselves. I mean, Will Ferrell, Rachel Dratch, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Maya Rudolph, like I think they all lead to some of the most iconic moments in SNL time. And then also, I mean, this is just quintessential early 2000s. So it's very nostalgic going back to watch it. Drew Barrymore, like all amazing hosts, but I really think that Will Ferrell carried this season. And it's just one that when I look at a lot of the sketches that I think are awesome early years of my favorites, like Amy Poehler and Tina Fey, like they all come back to 27. So that's a shocking first round pick, though. I didn't think I was going to go in that direction, but nevertheless, I did.
All right, well, let's talk about that one. I mean, season 27, you mentioned Amy, and that's Seth's first season as well. That season is very well known for, besides being Will Ferrell's final season, also being the post 9/11 and I guess Anthrax season after that. Like, there's a lot of things that are happening outside of the regular SNL lore, and that season ends up being known for basically what's happening in the world at the time. It changes the way that people view comedy. So for me, it's iconic in its own way. So Andrew, I would love to know from you, what do you think about season 27 in general?
I have a tricky relationship with that season. I do feel like that's kind of, I mean, no offense to Rebecca, but like the start of the downslope of that era. And I mean, just looking at anything immediately post 9/11 comedy wise, a lot of it doesn't hold up. A lot of it ain't good. And, a lot of it's kind of nasty. And there's just a lot of raw nerves in that season that just kind of, I don't know, don't really play that well for me. And I'm not as, personally nostalgic for it. So I would not have gone with that. But, that is fair game to Rebecca to also choose something from that era as her first pick.
Yeah, of course. And like I said, I mean, it's to each their own about how they felt about comedy at the time when all of this is happening. I think having Will Ferrell in this season, like if Will Ferrell had left a season earlier, oof. But having Will in this season definitely brings this up for sure.
And I mean, Lauren fought to keep him around. So good choice, because I think without, it would have really hurt.
Yeah.
No one will ever forget those shorts.
Yes, 100%. That would be from the Sean William Scott episode.
Never forget.
Yeah. Also recommend the Derek Jeter episode. I think that's a very fun episode of the show. So there are some really good ones there. And I think this is a very interesting pick by Rebecca, who has another pick right now to kick off the second round of the draft. So Rebecca, where are you going to go with your next pick?
Yeah, I was shocked this one wasn't taken yet. And I actually know it was almost the first pick of the first round, because Victoria did mention that. But I'm going to go with season 2. I think this is when SNL became SNL to the public, very engrossed in pop culture. I mean, you look back, and as someone who did not watch this till later in life and later in seasons, like I knew what Coneheads was before I was even a big SNL fan. And the fact that they came from season 2, the structure of the show became like part of what it is now. I mean, Gilda Radner won an Emmy for this in the second season of a kind of risque show at that time. And I mean, huge Gilda fan here. And I mean, we meet Bill Murray. The drama in real life with Chevy Chase is something that, as a pop culture fanatic, is also exciting and memorable to me. That, like, yeah, I'm not saying maybe this is not the funniest season. They definitely had their moments, but it really spawned SNL into culture. and it cemented SNL as to what it was. It was even more impressive that that was the second season of the show that was kind of a fire, like behind the scenes, and the fact that they were still able to do it, go strong, and keep the main gist of SNL in season 48 and what will be in season 49 stemming from season 2, I think is just so awesome and iconic.
Yeah, great pick here. I mean, obviously those original seasons, they all are iconic in their own ways, and I'm very curious where they're all going to go in the draft here. You mentioned Bill Murray. We get to meet him for the first time on the show in season 2. Steve Martin as well, for the first time in season 2, and really that transition from Chevy to Jane is so fascinating to get to see. Sammy, would love to know your thoughts here on season 2 going to Rebecca.
Yeah, I mean, it only makes sense that round 2 starts with season 2 here for the draft. Yeah, I mean, this is just a great pick here. I mean, you have, SNL starting to really dive into some political humor with the Debate 76 sketch, which is pretty iconic. And just a lot of things that were, a first time happenings on SNL because it's such a new show at the time, still finding its form, dealing with transitions, dealing with people leaving, people coming onto the show. We can update, things changing, and that, becoming, the foundation for how, for, almost 49, almost 50 years that, they're able to keep passing the baton. So I think definitely a great choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's not forget that SNL was NBC's Saturday night back in season 2. So we're still drafting, even though it had a different name. Okay. Bill Kenney, you kicked off your draft with season 14. Where are you going to go with your second pick?
Well, Rebecca just stole my second pick, but I was definitely eyeing that one up, and props to Rebecca for grabbing that right ahead of me here. But I'm going to go with my next choice. This was coming off another era that had played out pretty badly, and probably the closest to cancellation other than season 6, the end of season 6. Of course, I'm talking about season 21. We get Will Ferrell, Sherry O'Terry, Keckner. Norm had been on the show for a little while, and Molly had joined the previous spring. But this was, right after kind of the disastrous season 20, infamous season 20. And didn't know what was going to happen. Didn't know what the show was going to look like, if it was going to survive. I believe it was only renewed for 6 or 8 episodes going into that season. So they came right out of the gate, and Will did his Get Off the Shed, and they did Roxbury Guys, and obviously Bill Brasky, Mary Catherine Gallagher. So a lot of the stuff that they kind of ended up driving it into the ground, but at the beginning of that, it was the savior of the show. So going with season 21.
Yeah, this is a fascinating season to talk about. It's pretty much the start of a completely new show. I mean, I know that we have some holdovers with Tim Meadows and David Spade and others, but it's really the start of a new era, and we get to see how this cast will gel, and if they did, and fortunately they did. There were some adjustments, but really we get to meet this whole new cast trying to make it work together. And I think for me, this is like a lot of fun just to watch the show bring some life back into itself at the beginning of that run there. So this is a fascinating pick by Bill. Victoria, would love to know from you, how are you feeling about Bill's pick here?
It's undeniable that it's worthy of being a second round pick. I mean, you had Norm Macdonald helming the Weekend Update desk. And he had the O.J. Simpson trial coverage. And some of the most recognizable Saturday Night characters were made here. And, he just mentioned it too, but it's an iconic season for sure. And I think that for me, being a younger millennial, put SNL on my radar, which got me into the show. I'm sure it did for the rest of my generation as well. So yeah, season 21 is worthy to be here.
Okay, Sammy Kay, you have season 32 to kick off your draft. Where will you go with your second pick?
Ooh, this is already heating up here. I am in between 2 seasons, and they happen to be right next to each other, so this might just be a coin flip. I think I'm going to go with season 15. That's still available, right? I'm going to go with season 15. Obviously season 14 has already been picked, but right after season 14, we have season 15, and you have that cast basically, continuing to do the great work that they're doing. You have, iconic hosts that would go on to host many, many times throughout the shows. I think make their debut. John Goodman, Alec Baldwin, and Christopher Walken all make their hosting debuts in that season. There's no, people join the cast, but, this cast is really just, coming together and becoming just such a strong ensemble. And then you have probably one of the most iconic renditions of a recurring sketch of all time with the Tom Hanks Wayne's World sketch, which, that episode in general is such a fun watch. So I'm going with season 15 here.
Yeah, this is a great pick right at the top of the board. We kick off that season with the 15th anniversary of the show, the first major celebration in the show's history, and so much momentum from season 14. You mentioned John Goodman, Alec Baldwin, Christopher Walken, who kick off their SNL careers. Also, Andrew Dice Clay, very interesting episode, known very much for the Nora Dunn incident where she doesn't show up to the show, and that sort of ends her time with the show. But there are some interesting moments here that basically I view season 15 as the start of really the end of one era and the start of another before we bring on a lot of iconic cast members. So to me, this is a fascinating pick here from Sammy. Haynes, how are you feeling about
it? Great pick. Wayne's World is enough to make this, a season that would be a great way to intro anyone to SNL. Obviously one of the great recurring sketches of all time, and probably the best movie to ever come out of an SNL sketch. So yeah, fantastic pick.
Okay, so Sammy has a 32 and 15 to kick off his draft. It is back to me here, and I was definitely considering season 15. I was also considering one other one, which I'm going to go with now, and it's from the same era of the show, but it's kicking off that era of the show. It's season 12. I'm going to take season 12 here, which is the first time that we get to meet Dana Carvey, Phil Hartman, Jan Hooks on the show. We get to meet the church lady. How about chopping broccoli to kick off or finish up that first episode, which has just become absolutely iconic. There's the Sweeney sisters, which we get to see a bunch of times starting here, and it's really, really fun to see Jan Hooks and Nora Dunn work together and build their momentum on the show. And just seeing this new cast start to gel together, to me it had been a long time since we got to see something just really clicking on all cylinders. There are moments, I think, between the original cast and here that have really high highs, but this was getting to a point where oh, this is interesting. And obviously it's going to peak in 14 and 15, but this is the start of it. And I would definitely, if we're drafting on the premise of recommending seasons, I think this is a must watch. So for me, season 12 is the way to go here. Bill, would love to know what you think about me going with season 12 here. Was this the right spot for that?
Oh, absolutely. This was my favorite season that I was speaking of earlier that I kind of went back and forth. I don't think it's quite as strong as 14 for sure, but yeah, it's the start of something beautiful. And it was the start of my SNL fandom, watching that live and getting to see, what these people could do together. We get, the iconic Phil Hartman Reagan. We get Mr. Subliminal with Kevin Nealon. Star Trek Convention is one of the all-time classic sketches as well. So we get a lot of interesting stuff, a lot of great music. I know that's not what we're concentrating on, but a lot of great music this season as well. It saved the show, and it still holds up today, I can say for sure. So great pick.
Question before we continue. Sure. Sorry to cut you off, John. Can you do a chop and broccoli impression right now for the folks at home? Yeah.
Me personally?
Yeah.
She chop. No. She chop. That's the part I could do. Yeah.
I know the viewers are gonna be screaming for it. So.
Of course. Don't make me sing. That's a different season. All right. Andrew, did I nab your pick there, or were you going to go with some other season?
Well, yeah. 15 and 12 were both on my list. Classic seasons, love them both. So I'm going to go with something a bit more current. It's kind of like season 34, where I feel like, at least for me personally, it's not the it's maybe not the best of this era, but it's the groundswell of the earlier seasons finally catching up, and they've got a big old election to cover, and they mostly do it well. And then they said, we're going to do that for another 4 years, just that, the same thing. So I'm going to go with season 42, which, you've got, it was a bit sad going into it. We lost Killam. We lost Jay Farrell. But we got Mikey, we got Moffat, we got Melissa coming in. And, really, I think a lot of, looking at this list of episodes, there's a lot of great stuff. I remember starting to watch the season, and just from the first episode alone, the Margot Robbie weekend episode, I was like, holy crap, that was the premiere? Usually the premieres are you got to give that, grade that on a curve of whatever. They're just coming back. And so really, I feel like there's a lot of strong stuff in there. You got Julio Torres coming in and just cracking out home runs after home run. And really, a lot of the Hillary Trump stuff, it's not built to hold up, but at the time it did work. I did enjoy it. So I got to go with my feelings of how it happened, when it happened. So yeah, I'm going to go season 42.
I think this is a very good pick here from Andrew. You mentioned the Hillary Trump stuff. This was really a huge deal, the biggest deal in modern times that Alec was playing Trump. You had, people turning back to the show that haven't watched the show in years. Obviously, you have the iconic moments, for good or for bad, with the Hallelujah and Kate McKinnon thing. Then Dave Chappelle hosting the show, that was a huge deal as well. To me, this is chronologically the most recent season that I have the highest up on my board. I still think this is the best season in the 40s so far. So for me, this is a very solid pick here from Andrew. Rebecca, would love to know what you think. I asked Andrew what he thought of your pick, so I'm going to do the same.
Well, yeah, this is high up on my list. This is right around the time that I started getting interested in politics, from the fact that it was my freshman year of college. I turned 18. I was able to vote, and then that was a tough year, I think, for a lot of people, especially as someone now just getting into it. And SNL was comedic relief. I remember sitting with my freshman year roommate, and we would sit and watch this every single Sunday morning when we were able to stream it. And it's kind of what cemented me as an SNL fan, but also somewhere that I went to learn. And I think, yes, I'm learning from satire, but in a way that was just special to me and nostalgic. It is super, super high up on my list. And I toyed with picking it last round, but I wanted to get some of those, catch some of those while I could. So yeah, awesome pick, Andrew.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Haynes, you started your draft with season 3. I'm sure a lot of the listeners will love that. So what are you going to add next to your team?
Well, I hope it's a fun pick. It's not known as one of the greatest casts of all time, that's for sure.
Don't you do this to me.
We do have Mr. Billy Crystal,
and
fine. We have Martin Short doing men's synchronized swimming, and of course, one of my favorite all-time sketches ever, in White Like Me, which I've brought up multiple times on this show. I just think it's brilliant. Apparently, someone just texted me, apparently Dave Chappelle's coming to Raleigh, and I've said multiple times, I don't think Chappelle Show would exist without this type of comedy and that particular sketch. So season 10 is what I'm going with. Off the boards.
Yeah, I like this. This is the first ever Saul season that's going in our draft right now at the 13th pick. This is a very fun season, so unique in its history, where we have the final season for Dick Ebersol running the show, who really wanted to turn the show more into a pre-tape show than a live sketch show. And we get to see what Marty Short and Christopher Guest and Harry Shearer for a bit do with the pre-tape. So to me, this is interesting. I always will remember the season for the return of George Carlin as well. The first host in the history of the show comes back. So there's a lot of fun moments, the film festival, and then, a strike will end up cutting this season short, but not Martin Short. But yeah, just really fun season here. That was picked by Haynes. Sammy, what do you think? Season 10, going here to Haynes.
Well, if we're talking about seasons to recommend to people, I think this is certainly an interesting one to pick because it's kind of something that, Dick Ebersol did during this era to try to, I don't know if reinvent the show is the right word, but, you're bringing in these established comedians, which is something that, the show really hasn't done since. They brought in Michael McKean in like the early 90s, but otherwise, these are like pretty well-established people you're bringing into the fold. And, like Haynes said, like the synchronized swimming sketch is pretty classic. And, Martin Short is somebody who has continued to have a relationship with the show. And he kind of originated and, did a lot of those, some of his most famous characters during the season. So it's, definitely one of the more unique seasons that you could choose and recommend to somebody. So for that reason, I think is a good pick.
Okay, Victoria, you started our draft with picking season 18. You have to wait a long time for it to come back to you. So you have back-to-back picks here, but let's get your first pick, the last pick of season 2. Of round 2.
I kid you not. I don't know why this is making me, like, my heart is pounding and my palms are sweaty.
It's exhilarating.
I'm very nervous to say this. I don't know why. I'm going to preface that some of the content may not hold up today, but you can't fight what it did in that era with anything, in the past. So I'm going with season 7, which was 81, 82. You have Ramen Duke, you have Mary Gross, you have Eddie Murphy, you have Joe Piscopo. But after Gene Dumanian's exit, I hope I said that correctly, Dick Ebersol came in and overhauled. He completely restructured the cast, and it had Eddie Murphy and Joe Piscopo as its key star players, though this was the season of Eddie Murphy. He was the true star of the season, which launched, of course, an incredible career for him. And he carried a lot of the sketches. And you also had the National Lampoon magazine alum Michael Donahue, who was a head writer for about half the season, if I'm correct. Mm-hmm. So, we had Gumby, we had Mr. Robinson, we had Buckwheat, among others. And what makes it's just Eddie Murphy is what made this a great season, and I think a memorable season. And he alone, changed season 7 and kind of helped Dick Ebersol get on his feet with being a great producer. I don't know why that made me really nervous to say, but I think, it's
own your pick.
Yeah, no.
Season 7 rules.
Yeah, and Murphy transformed what it means for somebody who's not quite a primetime player. You know what I mean? He was fresh but he crushed that season. And if I'm gonna say, hey, if you're interested in watching Saturday Night Live and you want to learn where someone who was iconic as Eddie Murphy came from and where he got his beginnings and what makes him so darn funny, watch season 7. And I stand by that.
Andrew, you look like you're dying to talk about this, so go ahead.
Oh my goodness.
I'm surprised somebody chose a season 7 before me, for sure. No, I love the season. It's one of the ballsiest seasons of the show's run. And, you got Michael there, and it's basically like Dick Ebersol is like, all right, we're going to try and right the ship here. And Michael comes in and is like, all right, well, I'm going to set this place on fire, though. And so you got that dichotomy going on. You got everybody coming in that's new. You got my man Kazurinsky, who's the real star of the show. And you got
you hear
Joe.
that, TJ?
But you got Joe and Eddie as the strong pillars of the show. You got Robin, you got Mary, you got my man Brian Doyle Murray. I love it. Great pick. Love season 7.
Yeah. Very interesting pick. I'm not a huge fan of this season. I've probably said that on the podcast before, but it is a extremely experimental. No Live from New York, no monologues. It's just like a different thing, and I know that's like right up Andrew's alley. So, if you're an SNL fan that looks for stuff like that, I think that's really cool. And I totally support the pick, Victoria, if you feel strongly about it. So, I would love to know what your next pick is to kick off the third round of the draft.
Again, there's a couple of mine were taken. That's okay. This one, I'm just going to choose it because it has a lot of notability. there are things that you're like, oh yeah, SNL, it relates to SNL, you know this from SNL, and that's going to be season 26. So right before season 27, if my math serves me correct. Let's just start with this cast. You have Jimmy Fallon, you have Will Ferrell, Anna Gasteyer, who is incredibly underrated, Daryl Hammond, Chris Kattan, Tracy Morgan, Parnell, Sands, the wonderful Molly Shannon, and then you have Rachel Dratch, Jerry Minor, Maya Rudolph, and of course, the incredible Tina Fey. So this was Tina Fey's first year on the cast, which, you know, she stands on the shoulders of, you know, the Gilda Radners, but she's the one, like, I'm now standing on her shoulders, if that makes sense. So she, for my generation, is kind of like that North Star for women in comedy. You had Tina and Jimmy Fallon on the Weekend Update desk, which was an incredible duo. And then you just had some really solid sketches that came out of that. You have Lovers, you have Nick Burns, Computer Guy, you have Celebrity Jeopardy, you have Jeffries, I should say. And those are, like, you know, those are solid, still funny to this day. People can, you know, get the reference for a lot of those things. They hold up, and I you know, they're solid in those sketches. And then you have someone like Robert De Niro on the Weekend Update desk for Jimmy's review of Meet the Parents, which is really funny in a notable moment. And then this last part is just biased because I'm from Michigan. Eminem was a musical guest, and he's great. So shout out to Eminem if he's watching, and I know he is.
Yeah. Shout out, Marshall. So yeah, this is a really fun season to talk about. For me, I know you didn't mention it, Victoria, but I think just like an iconic season based on the 2000 debates. I mean, like all the Bush Gore stuff that happens here, where we get Will Ferrell and Daryl Hammond battling. I mean, that to me is what really makes this season. Those debates are seen as some of the greatest debates in the history of the show. So I think this is a very solid pick here. Bill Kenney, I'm going to head over to you on this one. What do you think about season 26 kicking off the third round to Victoria?
I like Victoria's strategery here. I think that's yeah. I mean, this is towards the end of a very solid 6 or 7 year run with the Will Ferrell led cast. Yeah, as was already mentioned, the debates are probably the last. Well, not the last. I mean, the Palin stuff was iconic as well, but it's one of the last times we really kind of get the pulse of America in these debates. And then, of course, you got Coconut Bangers Ball. I mean, come on, Goulet. Conan O'Brien hosting. That was one of the best episodes of that era. Yeah, I mean, this is really. I'm in the middle of watching the seasons in the 20s right now, and I just finished this season, and it really holds up. There's a lot of good stuff here. Everybody's kind of gelling, and as much as I don't like Fallon behind the update desk, I think Tina Fey kind of took it to another level. Having two update correspondents at that point hadn't happened since the early 80s. So it was nice to get back to that. And they've pretty much stuck to that other than a couple of Seth years in the middle of the 10s. So yeah, good pick.
Okay, Haynes, you have season 3 and season 10 to start your draft. Where are you going to go next?
I'm having a tough time deciding because I really thought that I might be saying season 26 right now. And the two that I, you know, and as you said, like those debates, I mean, first and foremost, but so now I'm having a little bit of a debate because I've got a season that's kind of similar to 26. And then I've got one that's really fine. I'll go with the one that's more groundbreaking. I just didn't want all three of my picks to be early season picks. I thought I'd get to branch out by now, but I'm going to go with season 1. I mean, it, you know, kind of, some might say it started the show. So pretty iconic season. And a lot of the comedy still holds up. I mean, I love Beethoven. And you know, word association. I don't know who else was doing TV like that. I mean, that's crazy. It was, I mean, they came out guns a-blazing. And look where we are, 48.9 years later. So yeah, I'm going with season 1.
Yeah, 24 episodes you get from season 1 of Saturday Night, otherwise known as the Chevy Chase Show, where we really just get to meet the cast. They're figuring out what they're doing for a long time. There's episodes that don't look like SNL at all, and eventually it comes together, and it is a beautiful thing to see SNL begin to establish itself. And just for being, season 1, it's an iconic pick here. So to me,
and it did set up the biggest movie star of the '80s, the next decade, pretty much.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's so many fun things to talk about with season 1 and just watch it develop that it had to go here. I don't think it was getting past Andrew Dick. I don't think it was getting past me. I think it's just so, to me, it's just so iconic. So great pick here by Haynes. Rebecca, what do you think about Haynes going with season 1 here early in the 3rd round?
Yeah, I'm shocked this wasn't taken in round 2. Honestly, I thought someone might have that. I mean, I have season 2 on my board, and I toyed around with it a little bit, but I'm a Virgo. I like structure. So going back, it's like, it's a roller coaster of like, you never know what you're going to get when you click the next episode, as like in binge watching culture. But I mean, yeah, it's the original recipe. It started the show. It was groundbreaking for what it was at the time. I mean, we got the Chevy Chase Show, as you said, which is also, I was a little more hesitant to pick it because I was like, we were able to see a lot more diversity, I think, in the next few seasons of like screen time. But I mean, yeah, it's definitely a roller coaster to watch. As you worded it perfectly, started the show. So it's definitely an awesome pick. And I'm impressed that you were able to get it this far, like in the game here. So awesome job.
Okay, Andrew, you have seasons 24 and 42 on your board. Where are you going to go next?
Season 16 is where I'm going to go. This is probably my last of the favorite seasons of this era. You do get a lot of the bloat coming in. Now, in most cases, it's not a bad thing. But I mean, this is the season where they have a middle category of, and these people that aren't the featured players. But I mean, you get Chris Farley coming in, Tim Meadows, Julia Sweeney, Sandler, Schneider, Spade, all these people coming in and augmenting already that killer cast that's been cooking for, 5 years. And I mean, everybody comes out so strong. I mean, the season comes out, Kyle MacLachlan and Sinead O'Connor, all-timer episode to kick off the season already. And then you got Swayze, a couple of the episodes down the line, Tom Hanks and Edie Brickell. I mean, it's just back-to-back, like Kevin Bacon. I mean, you got Stuart Smalley, Rich Meister starting the season. I think Deep Thoughts with Jack Handy begins the season. So it's really the birth of what would follow up until season 20, but it's at its most nascent and best form. And so season 16 is the one for me.
Okay, very interesting here. Yeah, season 16 is a fascinating turn in establishing a mini era, right? Because you had the second golden era we talked about. They really established the cast, and all of a sudden there's an influx of new talent. Spade, Sandler, Schneider, Meadows, Sweeney, Farley. Like, it's just crazy what comes in there, and they are going to become some of the biggest names in Hollywood after they're off the show. And it's really fun to get to see all of these new faces cook with people who are just crushing it on the show for those last couple of years. So I think this is the right spot for season 16. I really like this pick. Haynes, would love to know what you think of it.
Fantastic pick. Having a little trouble getting off mute there. 16, right at the top for me. I mean, you've got the Chippendales auditions, any, Jack Handy, Deep Thoughts. I mean, that was stuff that was the content that, in many ways made me fall in love with SNL. There's a lot of content that I was falling in love with when I was falling in love with SNL, pretty much. But the Shindels, I mean, it's just a fantastic season, I think, all around. So yeah, very good pick.
Okay, it's over to me for the fourth pick in the third round, and I'm going to take a season I'm pretty surprised wasn't taken before. I like sort of pairing this season with the two that I have already, which are season 34 and season 12, and I'm going to go 10 seasons later to season 22 of the show. So we talked about why that era is so interesting. Well, they essentially replaced David Koechner and Nancy Walls with Anna Gasteyer and Tracy Morgan, who come on the show, and they are, balls of energy that are, really, really exciting to have on the show. This season is known for having a lot of former cast members host the show, which is, I think, the most that's ever hosted the show. So we get 7 out of the 20 episodes hosted by former cast members, including Dana Carvey, Robert Downey Jr. hosts the show, Damon Wayans, Phil Hartman, Chris Rock, Martin Short, Chevy Chase, and Mike Myers all host the show. And truly, the reason why I really wanted to pick this season over all else is because of the kickoff of some of the recurring sketches that have become some of the greatest recurring sketches in the history of the show. We get to see Celebrity Jeopardy. We get to see Delicious Dish. Then there's a bunch of ambiguously gay duo, ex-presidents, all the Schmeigel cartoons that we get to see. So for me, like, this is a really, really fun season while they're still, figuring it out. I think Will Ferrell is like really starting to like take over the show and put his foot down on the pedal. So for me, I think this is the place to put it. And I wanted one of those seasons from that era to combine with some of the other ones that I had. So that is why I went with that season. Sammy, would love to know if that was near the top of your board of what was left, or how you're feeling about that pick.
Yeah, I mean, similar to, I feel like a lot of people throughout this draft are trying to find things from different eras. This is one from that era of the show that I was definitely looking at for my next pick. What you mentioned about, the SNL alum that come back to host, I think there were 5 in a row, right? It was, Dana, Chris Rock, Robert Downey Jr., Phil Hartman, Martin Short. I mean, that's just like an insane sort of run. Obviously, bringing in someone like Tracy Morgan and Anna Gasteyer is huge. Another sketch that comes to mind is the Star Wars like auditions they did with Kevin Spacey, but yeah, I mean, so that there's definitely things that make that season pretty memorable, and you have that cast, that just came in, the prior season. As we are all saying, you have the season where the cast kind of forms and then they start to gel, and this is one where they start to gel.
Before we go on, Andrew, you were like making lots of faces when I made that pick, so I just have to know, why do you hate this one so much?
Oh, I just don't really like that season, to be honest. I think they go. I think they realized what worked in season 21 and then just tripled down on it. So I think you see a lot of episodes that are nearly all reoccurring things. And I know that you have less of a problem with that than I do. But I think, just that season, I don't know, sandwiched between season 21 and season 23. I feel like 22 is a bit of a dip, personally. I would not have chosen that one. So I was a bit surprised, to be honest.
Okay. No, that's fair. That's fair. Yep. Different strokes. Okay. Sammy, you have season 32 and season 15 on your board. So where are you going to go next?
Yeah, like I said before, I was thinking about picking season 22 there. So I had to kind of scramble here. But there's only so many seasons that you can pick with the original cast. And already 3 have come off the board. I do have a lot of love for season 5 because I'm a big Harry Shearer fan. And I like what they did with the featured players coming in, with the writers coming in. But I'm going to go with season 4. Definitely, this is kind of where things in that original era of the show, start to dip a little bit. But I mean, if you're talking about introducing somebody to SNL, they will see, all of the sort of recurring characters from that era done a couple of times, but they'll see them. And, there's also episodes in there, like the Carrie Fisher episode that I really like. It was cool to see her come in and host with the Blues Brothers, as the musical guest there. And then you have just things that when I watched for the first time, I'm like, I can't believe this is, something that was on television, like Uncle Roy, the Buck Henry sketch that, they brought back a couple times as well. So, being able to have the original cast on a draft team here, and, I'm happy I was able to scoop this one up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very interesting here. Season 4, the last for John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd on the show. And, coming off of season 3, there is like an interesting, I find a little bit of a dip in quality in season 4, but I still think that there's some like iconic moments here that obviously original cast. So, I totally understand the premise of what you're going for with putting some original cast season on your list. Victoria, would love to know for you what you feel about Sammy going with season 4 here.
Season 4 it's a good one. Obviously not my favorite, but I think it had, again, the last of John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, and then you can kind of see the hole that they left since they leave. But Bill Murray and Jane Curtin together was delightful. And then even though Bill Murray, I don't think We Can Update was his bag. Of course, he's very talented and in many other ways, and he was better on stage. But yeah, I mean, Garrett Morris was great in that season. And then what was it called? Father Guido Sarducci, yes.
He's more in season 5. He premieres at like the very, very end. But that's more of a season 5 thing.
But thanks to season 4, we got it. And so I think that was when we got Jane, You Ignorant Slut. So
that's what Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that is true. That is true. Yes, because Dan Aykroyd was not on. It was not on updating. So, that's true. Yeah, you're right.
So that alone, good choice, Sammy.
Yeah, true. Lots of great moments there. Okay, so Bill, Kenney, over to you. You have season 14 and 21 on your board, and you have another pick to make.
Yeah, I'm going to go with another redemption season. As I said, I'm in the middle of rewatching the 20s and the early 30s of the show, and boy, does it get bad towards the end of the 20s. And finally, we turned the corner in 31 with the addition of Bill Hader, Andy Samberg, Kristen Wiig. Sudeikis had joined at the end of 30, had been on for a writer for a little while. But that's the beginning of the digital shorts. We get 2 a-holes. We get the classic Baldwin-Martin fight for who's going to be the most hosted of all time. This is really kind of the start of the next golden era, as we've referred to it. 32 is probably a little bit stronger as they get their footing, but I wanted to make sure that I got one of this era's on my list. So I'm going with season 31.
Yeah, great pick here. I was really struggling to pick the season or not. I think there's problems that I have with the season that don't bring it up to that like upper echelon tier, but I think it's really strong first HD season. So that's something that I think is really fascinating to get to see. It's visually appealing as far as turning the page over to that new era, and obviously getting to know Bill Hader, Andy Samberg, Kristen Wiig. That Jack Black and Neil Young episode is like one of the most iconic episodes in the history of the show. Julia Louis-Dreyfus returning to the show. This is also a really great moment from that season. So for me, season 31 is a very strong pick here. Andrew, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, strong pick. I also semi-recently went through that season again. And yeah, it is mostly pretty strong. Anything that doesn't quite work are the things that they're clinging on to from the previous seasons. So, I mean, really, obviously the show, I mean, thankfully just understood what needed, what worked that season. And we got season 32, 33, and 34. But it's a very much a transitional season, and there's still some crud left. But mostly it's pretty damn strong. And like you said, I mean, the Jack Black, Neil Young, I mean, that's top 10, episodes right there. So they're pulling out some pretty big episodes in that season. So strong pick.
Okay, Rebecca, you have 27 and season 2. You will make 2 back-to-back picks. Let's start with the last pick in the third round.
Okay, so for my last pick in the third round, I'm going to go with season 37 here. We have a cast of Fred Armisen, Bill Hader, Seth Meyers, Bobby Moynihan. It's Andy Samberg and Kristen Wiig's last season. So we got the last great sketches out of them that we're able to see. And then, I mean, a huge shout out that Kate McKinnon joined. I mean, she didn't make her mark here, but as one of my all times, I'm just even seeing her on the screen and seeing what would lead up to the future of SNL, I think this season was kind of a turning point in the fact that like I think of the next new era as where Kate joined and then like Kristen kind of faded out from a female perspective, because then the start of the next season with Cecily and 80, in my mind, that's the turn of an era. But I always love the seasons where they kind of overlap in my mind, that you get some old, some new. And this is when I was like full watching the show. I mean, I think this one was just so awesome. I mean, Hidden Valley Ranch is enough of a sketch that just like would make me pick this season. And looking at the host list here is the real reason why I chose 37 over 38, because like every single host is like a hit. And you read this and they're all still huge. I mean, the season like has Channing Tatum, Zooey Deschanel in one of my favorite sketches in the show, and Daniel Radcliffe with the Target Lady is just also up there, my favorite sketches. And I just think this is really a pop culture moment. But if you really look at the hosts, it's why season 37 really stood out to me. It's because they all still hold and they're all still famous and they're all still amazing actors or comedians and performers. So I'm really excited that I got this 37 pick in that kind of turn into the next or more recent day era that we still kind of think of SNL and even in season 48 as.
Yeah, I think this is a really fun pick here. Obviously, iconic moments at the end of the season with She's a Rainbow. So we get that goodbye to Kristen Wiig, Andy Samberg's goodbye as well with the 100th digital short and the return of Lazy Sunday. So, those to me are really important moments. The goodbye to Kristen and the hello to Kate you mentioned. So those are important things. I think Jimmy Fallon's Christmas episode is just a really, really great episode as well to point out from that season. So for me, such a solid pick here from you, Rebecca, to finish the third round. Haynes, would love to know how you feel about season 37. Leaving us in the third round.
Fantastic pick. Absolutely. This season for all the reasons, we've mentioned already, but just a season that is full of great sketches, top to bottom. I'd be happy to recommend this to anyone. Almost Pizza, one of my favorites of all time. So many great quotable moments from that one. We've got the hot new game show, Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Laughs. Just a very fun season. Great pick.
Absolutely. Okay, Rebecca, you are up next to start the fourth round of the draft. Where are you going to go?
So thinking, and I know we were chatting upon some game plan and really what's the best way. And I mean, a good draft, and I think a good roster has diversity. So I'm going to stick with my sevens, the endings of a bunch of my things. So I have 27 and 37, and I'm going to go with 17 and go with season 17 here. I mean, this is just enjoyable all around because of the Chris Farley, Adam Sandler, Rob Schneider, David Spade, Chris Rock, like powerhouse of a cast there. And they really took over. I mean, this is Jan Hook's last season, so that was also great to see some of her last work in the show. And I mean, that's just a powerhouse of groups. And I thought it was an awesome cast at this point. The bad boys of SNL were really taking over here. And also, I think there were some pretty iconic moments. I mean, one that really stands out to me, and as we see Kieran Culkin on the cast a lot, we always flash back to the host of the show. We see flashback to the Macaulay Culkin episode, which is definitely one that stands out to me as like, it's absurd. He was so young hosting the show with such a crazy rambunctious cast. That's always a good one to go back and rewatch. And also, I think there were some good ones here. I mean, when Chevy hosted this, it was the last Wayne's World that we've seen before the movies. So I think it was just kind of wrapping up a lot of stuff while really making room for just such a powerhouse cast here. So I'm going to go with season 17.
Yeah, interesting pick here from Rebecca. I know you mentioned that this was Jan Hooks' last season. I believe Jan Hooks' last season was 16, but Jan Hooks appeared like a ton of times during season 17, so it sort of felt like that was her real last season. She was like around.
I was
all
like,
the time.
I've seen sketches with her in it in season 17.
She's
that
there.
Makes sense.
Yeah, she basically shows up every week. So like it's like she's sort of like a pseudo cast member, but this is a cast.
Sorry,
91.
Julia.
Yeah, this is a cast in 91, 92 that is it's interesting because it's very bloated. So if you like that thing, I mean, we're gonna get that a lot in the 40s where we talk about too many cast members. This is like the season we always reference back to, which was like back in the day they did have a season where they had like way too many cast members. But if you like that type of thing because of the iconic names and what they ended up becoming, like I think there's a lot of moments here that are interesting to talk about. And we are getting to the point of the draft where the picks are becoming more and more interesting depending on what you like. So,
yeah. I mean, I like that bloated type of cast also, though, because I feel like these are people that even if the sketch itself is not the funniest, I'm still going to laugh at them. And having so many powerhouses on a cast is actually something I weirdly like. Like, even in the later 40s, I've been kind of vibing with that because even if the sketch itself is not my favorite that I've ever seen, like, someone is still going to make me laugh that's performing. So,
totally fair. Yeah. Andrew, what do you think about this season 17 in general?
Why do you keep throwing it to me to disagree with Rebecca?
Okay, fine. So I'll go to somebody else. I'm trying to go to the other side of the board. Haynes, what do you think about season 17 here?
Well, I have to disagree with Rebecca. I'm just kidding. No, 17's a fun pick. I think that I mean you've got I mentioned before. I think anytime that if we're introducing folks to SNL, deep thoughts. We used to quote deep thoughts on the bus all the time. So you got plenty of that. Mr. Belvedere's Fan Club is a great sketch. I think there's a lot to like about 17, so I think it's a pretty solid pick.
All right. Sounds good to me. Bill, your team is season 14, 21, and 31. Who is your next pick?
I'm going to keep the theme going with the seasons ending in 1, Alex. I'm going to go with 41. I think this is the end of the innocence, as it were, before we get into the really vitriolic political stuff that we saw for about 4 or 5 years. Even though there's a very infamous episode in this season that I still won't rewatch. This is kind of that cast gelling. Cecily 80, we got Che and Jost finally hitting their stride behind the update desk and still going strong today. You get the Adele Thanksgiving Miracle. You've got Farewell, Mr. Bunting, Burn Your Enthusiasm. So Meet Your Second Wife. So you've got quite a lot of good stuff going on here with a very iconic cast, which still holds up today. Before it makes that turn into the ditch. So I'm going 41.
Yeah, good pick here. I mean, season 41, the last for Taron Killam and Jay Farrow. You mentioned sketches where hosts, some great hosts. So Tina and Amy hosting together. Fred Armisen, to me, still has one of the greatest episodes ever by a returning cast member. Larry David hosting the show was just very cool. So there's a lot of Larry David, Bernie Sanders stuff happening here before we get the Alec Baldwin Trump happening in season 42. And then, I mean, it's, depending on how you feel about Donald Trump hosting the show in season 41, that could move this up or down on your board. So, Andrew, I will go to you here because you picked season 42. So I'm curious how you feel about Bill picking season 41.
I mean, this was the one I wanted to go with, honestly, in my heart, but I felt like already too many sort of classic sketch or seasons had already been snatched from me. So I knew that season 42 would be, one to go for. But yeah, I totally agree with season 41 being, the sort of last moment of innocence for that cast, and everything really just kind of coming together. And, you go back and you can even see, Mikey's basically there without being on screen. You got the Dinklage episode with Space Pants and stuff. Like, it's like you see so many of the things that would roll on into the following seasons. So, yeah, strong pick and definitely one that, like 40 and 41 as a person returning to SNL at that point, I was really championing, to people of like, no, the show's gotten really good again. Like the last 2 seasons have been really killer. And then the show blew up again, in season 42. And it's like, see, it's been good. So, strong pick. Good one.
Okay. Sammy, you have seasons 32, 15, and 4. Which one are you going to pick for your 4th pick?
Okay. Well, I think I am going to pick for this next one, I'm going to take it back to my senior year of high school. I'm going to go with season 38. I find this season to be really fun because Kristen Wiig and Andy Samberg had just left the show, but we have Bill Hader, Fred Armisen, and Jason Sudeikis sticking around. Kate McKinnon had joined in the last couple episodes of the prior season, but then we also get Cecily Strong, Aidy Bryant, and Tim Robinson, who's only on for a season, but is able to get some really wacky stuff onto the show. Like Z-Shirts, obviously, is kind of a cult classic. And I just love to kind of go back and watch seasons where you're like, oh yeah, I didn't realize that these people were kind of all on the cast together at the same time. Obviously, you have, Taron Killam, Vanessa Bayer, and Bobby Moynihan, all, kind of veterans somewhat at that point in their third or fourth year on the show. And, so many kind of classic sketches, or at least personal favorites for myself. Puppet Class, the Bill Hader sketch, Main Justice. Did Jesus Uncrossed is one from the Christoph Waltz episode that me and my friends, obviously we had just seen Django Unchained at the time, and we loved that. And, I just think for me, being able to kind of see the mixture of eras, a lot of times we talk about the transitional season not being the best, but I think the way that they were able to kind of handle this one made for a really fun season.
Yeah, great pick here. Season 38. So like we talked about, the final one for Bill, for Fred, for Jason, and then the first for Aidy and Cecily. There's a lot of interesting moments here in season 38. I think when we were talking about season 37, we talked about that being the end of an era. To me, this is for sure the end of the era. This is like when the last of the iconic cast members from that group decide to go, and we get to start off that next era of the show. I think there are some fun sketches here, including Justin Timberlake's Five-Timer sketch, which I think is just a really all-time great one. And there's a lot of fun here in season 38 to talk through. Victoria, what do you think about season 38 going here to Sammy?
I'm upset about it. It's Michigander on Michigander crime. It's heartbreaking. No, it was definitely next. I was so passionate about it. It was next on my list. And it's okay. I get it. It was through your high school career. Blah, blah, blah. No, but in all seriousness, like this was, as you just mentioned, the beginning of a transitional period. And we were given one of the cast's strongest performances in this year. It was also an election year. So that gave then even stronger material. And it just solidified Jay Farrow as an artist with his impressions, especially his Barack Obama impression. He always stood out to me, and it just solidified like he's a solid comedian, he's a solid actor, he's a solid artist, and I think it strikes a great balance. That season strikes a great balance with hosts in terms of like rookies and veterans. I mean, we had Kristen Wiig, we had Melissa McCarthy, we had Martin Short, we had the Justins, Bieber and Timberlake. Galifianakis was there, and then that I think was the season of Stefan's farewell, if I'm not mistaken. And when are you going to see Anderson Cooper fight someone? So, no, it's a great cast. And then of course you have Aidy Bryant, Tim Robinson, and Cecily Strong, who I admire so greatly. They are all Chicago Second City folks, and I see their names, I see their pictures every day. But Tim Robinson, I hold even closer to my heart because prior to that, he was a Detroit boy performing locally in Detroit. So you broke my heart, Sammy, but for good cause.
Sorry.
Okay. Up next, we have me in round 4. So season 34, 12, and 22 is what I have picked so far. I got to go with the highest pick on my board here. To me, this is such an underrated season. I think this actually could be a top 5 season. It has that potential. There are moments here. And I was very hesitant about taking back-to-back seasons, but I'm going to go with season 35 here. I think there's a lot of fun moments in season 35, including, obviously, the Betty White episode. I mean, that to me is like naturally one of the most interesting episodes in the history of the show, with that campaign where people are voting for Betty White to host the show. We get to meet Jenny Slate and Nassim Pedrad on the show. The Taylor Swift episode, in retrospect, is like extremely iconic, given how much she was a star then, but how much of a big star she is now. And I still think it continues a lot of the momentum that we saw in season 34. I think this is a really like good value for this season at this point in the draft. And just in terms of like recurring sketches that started that season, we get the ESPN guys with Forte and Sudeikis. This is Will Forte's last season on the show, so he's like really just like firing up some good stuff here with Pete Twinkle and Greg Stink. We get the debut of What Up With That. There's Hollywood Dish, some fun Kristen Wiig and Fred Armisen stuff here. So I mean, I think there's some interesting things here for me to pick it at this point in the draft. So season 35 is my pick. Bill, what do you think about that pick?
Yeah, we're still in a great era at this point. You also have Potato Chip Thief, which is an all-time classic.
Yep.
Closet Organizer with John Hamm. Game Time with Randy and Greg. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really, really great stuff. You can tell how much this cast gets along and loves each other at this point. And yeah, great pick. I don't think there's anything wrong with going back-to-back seasons if it holds up. So well done.
Thank you. Okay, Andrew, you're up next. You have seasons 24, 42, and 16. There are still lots of seasons left on the board. Where are you going to go?
Yes. Well, I'm kind of surprised that 2 Ebersol seasons were snatched up so early in the game, but I'm glad they left the best season still there. It's season 8 of SNL, where I feel like you really get what Dick Ebersol wanted to do with the show. Season 7, as much as I love it, you know, it's more, I think they were trying to shoot for like, hey, you remember when you liked the show as it was back in the earlier seasons, and yet you brought Michael back in, and it was kind of a failed experiment in a way. But season 8, I feel like it from the start of the season, it's a new thing. You've got Gary, Julia, and Brad in there. And, you know, again, the tentpoles of Joe and Eddie are only stronger now. You got Eddie, you know, basically hosting the Christmas, you know, that's the season where the cast member hosts the Christmas episode. And just so many banger episodes. I love just like, I'm such a fan of the gimmickry of the Ebersol era. You know, you've got Chevy Chase live via satellite for the premiere. You got Drew Barrymore as the youngest host. You got, bringing in other comedic forces outside, like the Smothers Brothers. You got Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas. And the music, I mean, it's all killer. Queen, The Clash, Men at Work, Joe Jackson, Squeeze, Lionel Richie, Tom Petty, Randy Newman. I mean, it's the Ebersol era cooking at just 100%, and it's right. You know, it's as Eddie is ascending, but not like it is in season 9, where he's 1 foot out the door. He's still in the game. He's still part of the cast. It's still an ensemble, and Gary, Julia, and Brad add a lot to it. I do actually enjoy Brad's Weekend Update, at least in its earliest form. And you still got Kaz there, so it's still great. Love it. Season 8.
Yeah, this one I do agree with. This one I really feel like the highest quality of the Ebersol era happens during season 8, and you mentioned a lot of amazing moments. Let's not forget like Stevie Wonder hosting the show.
Yes.
So that's great. The mayor Ed Koch comes in to host the finale. So there's some really fun moments here in season 8 of the show. Sammy, can I go to you for your thoughts on season 8 going to Andrew here?
Yeah, I mean, like he said, you know, you have a cast member hosting. I think if you're talking about trying to recommend the season to somebody who, you know, maybe, you know, is a fan of SNL who hasn't gotten to see some of the more iconic moments, that's something that, for me at least, when, you know, I first started getting into the show and learning about all the history, you know, learning that not only Eddie Murphy was on the show as a cast member and he hosted, that's just kind of one of those fun facts that to be able to get to watch that episode And as well as like everything else that they have going on. The Joan Rivers episode in that season is pretty memorable.
Yes.
Obviously, Julia Louis-Dreyfus joins the cast. So obviously she goes on to have a huge career. So there's a lot to like and enjoy here. So I think as far as a value pick as well, the fact that this is still on the board is pretty good pick.
Okay. Haynes has season 3, 10, and 1. So speaking of early seasons, he's got a few of them. I'm curious where you're going to go next, Haynes. So let's get your fourth pick.
I'm breaking the mold. No more trends or pattern with the early seasons. I'm going to dip back into an era that we've touched on several times at this point. So I will go with 36. This is a really great season, right in the heart of just a really great period. It's got some all-time classic sketches. What's that name? I still watch that every few months. It seems it just ends up being something that I get to see pretty often. Any Stefan, of course, is something that you want to show folks. Anthony Crispino was a character that I loved. I just think 36 is a very solid season.
Yeah, this was very high up on my board as well. I still think that things are going really well here. It's tough for me with no Will Forte, but I do love the additions of some good cast members here with Vanessa Bayer, Taron Killam, and Jay Farrow. Paul Britton himself actually does a pretty good job when he comes on the show. But kicks off with Amy Poehler, and there's some really fun moments there to start the season. And I think there's a lot of great moments here in season 36. Rebecca, I'm going to ask you what you think of Haynes picking season 36 here.
Yeah, I think this is an awesome pick here. We do get the gathering, not gathering. We get some good new cast members here. You took my thought of like it kicks it off with Bronx Beat as like in the first episode here, so I thought that that's an awesome way to kick it off. It's a good solid cast at this point with just really great hosts and musical guests. I honestly think like with Nicki Minaj, like that's huge. To be able to see her on SNL was like such a colliding of worlds here for me. And yeah, I mean, just it's a solid season. Like good sketches, quality stuff. Tina Fey hosting too, and Amy Poehler hosting both in the same season will only prove for a good season. So good pick.
Okay, up next, Victoria will end round 4 and start round 5. So let's get your first pick, Victoria.
This is tough because just about all of my very top seasons have been chosen. That's not to say that SNL is short of phenomenal seasons. They're all great, but the ones I was most passionate about are gone. That being said, I think I'm going to go, let me make sure it wasn't taken. Okay, I think I'm going to go season 30 here. For reason is Fred Armisen's a repertory player. There's Rachel Dratch, Tina Fey, Will Forte, Hammond, Parnell, Myers, Poehler, Rudolph, Sands. And then you have someone who I think is an underdog and I think is underrated in SNL history. I'm probably a lone wolf in that, but that's going to be Finesse Mitchell. I think he was phenomenal in this show, and I think he deserved a little bit more than what he got. But we also had Rob Riggle on this season. I think later this season is when Jason Sudeikis leaves the writer's room and joins the cast. And then, of course, we have Kenan Thompson. I think this also marks, Tina Fey and Amy Poehler hosting Weekend Update together. We have The Falconer with Will Forte. And then we have such a great sketch, Celebrity Jeopardy sketch here with Bill Cosby, played by Kenan, Sean Connery by Daryl Hammond, and then Sharon Osbourne by Amy Poehler. I remember that Celebrity Jeopardy is like one of the first I ever saw of it. And then last but not least, the Barry Gibb talk show, I think, was in the season as well. I think overall, we had variety, and this cast was a strong cast. And then you have Fred Armisen and Kenan Thompson off the top of my head, who are, two superstars are coming out of this. And of course, Tina Fey and Amy Poehler as well. But, and then of course, who could forget the scandal of all scandals? And that was Ashley Simpson being caught lip syncing. And I think that was like one of the first times, and maybe the only time, one of the few times I should say, where the musical guest has overshadowed the episode or a season, or
It's happened,
nonetheless.
but yeah, I was going to bring
Yeah.
this up if you didn't, Victoria, because obviously that's a very memorable moment from season 30 of the show.
Yes.
Bill, would love to know what you think of season 30 going here to Victoria.
Ooh, I don't know. I have to disagree. I think 30 is pretty rough. You can go through even the bad seasons. I mean, the notorious bad seasons like 20 and 6, and say there were some really fantastic people in this cast. And what the hell happened? Was it the writing? They never quite found a good Bush Kerry matchup. I mean, this was a political season. And while Forte did a decent job, much better than the last 2 or 3 people after Farrell left, he wasn't great. Seth was not made to play John Kerry. And then, I mean, you have stuff like Horatio doing Carol. Like, there's a lot of questionable stuff at this point. I would say the highlight of this season for me would be Will coming back to host. That was like, I just remember being so excited that he was going to come back and host the finale. But yeah, I'm not. I mean, the Tina Amy weekend update was definitely better than Tina Fallon to me. But yeah, not wouldn't have been up there for me. But I respect
What is
your pick.
your deal with am I missing the backstory as to why you don't like Fallon behind that desk?
Oh, so many things. That's its own podcast. But I just don't think he was very good behind there. He broke too much, even behind the update desk. But yeah, we can get into that some other time.
That's the next. We should do a draft on Jimmy Fallon breaking.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
That'll take
people
about
will-
5 hours.
Yeah, people will love that. Yeah, that's great. Okay, let's go round 5, Victoria. Perhaps the next person we ask about your pick will agree much more with you, that one. So let's see what will join seasons 18, 7, 26, and 30.
Again, a lot of the ones I was super passionate about have been taken. But at this point, I'm going on memorable moments, and what sticks out as like, this is an SNL sketch. Oh, for sure, that was on SNL. Memorable, notable moments. Whew, I'm going to say season 29, Back to Becker. I don't think it gets enough appreciation. It's definitely not its best season, but one of the better casts. Not much changing from season 30, if anything at all. I don't think. Maybe no, Jeff Richards, I think, left at season 29. But yeah, I mean, they had the combination, I think, while maybe not behind the desk, but I think Jimmy Fallon, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, and Maya Rudolph, that little group, I think, started to make their names as comedians and kind of started standing out to folks as well. And I think that's when we got Fred Armisen and Keenan for the first time. Is that correct? Is that 29 when they first joined?
That would be Keenan and Finesse would have joined in season 29.
Keenan and Finesse, okay. And then you have things like the Hermione growth spurt sketch that came out of there. You have the very funny Cork Soakers making Janet Jackson, laugh. And then, of course, there is the Debbie Downer Disney World, which is, I guess, objectively funny here. So I'm just thinking about, the comedy and content, and of course the actors and stars that came out of that season. And I think season 29 is strong in that. And I think that was also there was a really good Barry Gibb talk show with Fallon and Justin Timberlake there too. So yeah, I also think they had solid hosts with Lindsay Lohan, Jennifer Aniston.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, you doubled down here from season 30 to 29. You were like, I know what I like, and I'm going to take it. So I respect that, Victoria.
I like what I like, and I like it. So
yes. I do think that season 29 and 30 are so similar that it wouldn't necessarily be worth going to somebody else on it to ask their opinion. And you said why you want those seasons. So I support you standing up for what you want. So
Thank
if
you.
And if you're a listener and you think that Victoria picked those are seasons that you would want to watch and agree that she should recommend, then you vote for Victoria. So I support it, Victoria. Okay. Haynes. Yeah, F you, Bill. All right. Haynes, you have season 3, 10, 1, and 36. Where are you going to go with your 5th pick?
Okay, so I know you said they're so similar. We don't need to talk about it. You're going to hear from me about it right now. Because, listen, first of all, I was just laughing so hard when Victoria picks 29 because it felt like basically a redo of the 30 pick. But it's just like, I think that's just a better season than 30, but they're very similar. There's a lot of overlap. I mean, listen, Debbie Downer, Barry Gibb, there's plenty of highlights, but it's just like a better version of season 30. So I was actually going to pick that if it made it back to me. And in some way, in like a vote of solidarity with you. But
thank you. An ally.
Yes.
Unlike Bill. Just kidding.
Yeah, F you, Bill.
Yeah, F you, Bill.
I'm glad I'm not getting it.
I purposely chose not to steer into the end.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So now I think, let's see. You know what? So 29's gone. We're going to creep back a little further in time, not too far, but I'm going to go with season 25. So we've got, I mean, honestly, behind the scenes Blue Oyster Cult, you know, I don't know if I need to say anything else as far as like introducing people to SNL. So we've got that. We've got the introduction of the Boston Teens, which became a great recurring sketch for me. I always liked those sketches a lot. I think we're getting to the point in the draft where we're picking like solid seasons. And I think this is a solid season.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I mean, 25, the 25th anniversary of the show, which is really fun. That starts off this season. We get the return of Norm Macdonald hosting the show, which I think is always cool. We get to meet Rachel Dratch for the first time, Maya Rudolph for the first time, and of course, Mort Cowbell. That's an iconic moment. So for me, this is a very solid pick here from you, Haynes. Andrew, how do you feel about season 25?
Oh, I mean, like I already said, I was nearly going to choose that over 24. And really, I don't know. I'm kind of surprised that both of those seem to be, lower tier picks for everyone, because maybe it's just an age difference. But I mean, that was when SNL was the happening thing for me. So those 2 seasons specifically. So yeah, totally agree. I love season 25. It was just a coin toss between 24 and 25, and it was just like I'd just seen 24 recently, so I felt more confident.
Okay. Well, I don't know if Haynes sniped your pick from you here, but if he didn't, would love to know where you are planning on going with your 5th pick. You have 24, 42, 16, and 8.
Yeah. So I'm going to sneak in one that hasn't been picked, even though it would not be my first pick for this era, though it is, like Haynes said, we're just in strong territory here. And so I'm going to go with season 13, which I think you, John, stole season 12, which I love because it's so, I mean, it really is like, I think season 12 and 13 really have their own flavor that they got going on. And so season 13 carries that over, but it started to be augmented with, Hans and Franz and stuff. And so this, that era is started building out a bit more from the more headier conditions of season 12, but it's still, top tier stuff going on. I love, nobody mentions him, but Paul Miller as a director of SNL is just phenomenal. So you go back and watch some of those episodes and they are just beautifully shot. Truly wonderful things going on behind the scenes. They're really like kind of making some cinematic live sketches there. So yeah, season 13, I feel pretty strong with that one.
Yeah, this is like our first real strike season, I believe. I guess season 10 was taken already, but
well, I think there's 2 because there's a tech strike at the beginning that they push through, and then there's a writer's strike that kills the season.
Right. Yeah. And for me, that is an interesting, aspect to this, because we see how iconic season 14 becomes, and it's like, would season 13 have gotten there?
Oh wait, no, the Tech Strike is season 14. I think. I'm sorry.
Okay, well,
I could
it's
be
just
wrong.
interesting to think about where season 13 would have gone had it not ended early.
Yeah.
Had so much potential, was really headed towards that like great era of the show. And then of course, like a lot of people talk about the fact that Gilda may have hosted if that season would have continued. So I find season 13 fascinating. And Bill, I know for you this is really right in your prime viewing time. So what do you think about season 13 landing all the way here to Andrew for his fifth pick?
Yeah, this might be a diamond in the rough coming this late. I mean, you and I talked about this on the Strike podcast, like what could have been. I mean, this season ended in February, and they were really hitting their stride, as Andrew said. You get the first Hans and Franz, you get some really great ads like Compulsion and Handy Off, and even the recurring characters that had debuted at 12, like Church Chat and Sweeney Sisters, found some of their more iconic versions. The Sweeney Sisters with Paul Simon was in 13. So there's a lot of really great stuff here, and it's sad that it ended as early as it did. But great pick.
For someone who has been giving me shit this whole time, you pick one season that's a what could have been season, and you keep saying that as your main argument to defend it, but it didn't. So it doesn't matter.
No, I didn't say that. I love the 13 episodes that exist.
Mm.
All right. Love the battle here that we got going on. Yeah, it's getting very heated. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm up next.
Bill said that. Be mad at Bill again.
Yeah. F you. No.
Victoria's already mad at me. No, Rebecca, don't be mad at me.
No, I couldn't be mad at you.
Yeah.
I could.
All right. Okay, fifth pick for me here. I think we're 32 picks about into this draft. Season 34, season 12, season 22, and season 35 are my picks here. I think I have a couple seasons I'm considering. One is I feel is like really high in quality, but there's a season I think I have to go with here. I think the value is too good not to take it, and I'm not sure if it would get back to me. I'm actually going to go with season 48 here, the last season of the show. I think that this is the right time to pull the trigger on this season, where we get the debut of Michael Longfellow, Marcello, Molly on the show. I think it's really, really fascinating season where we get some like new blood injected into the show. And I just think that run of shows from Keke Palmer's episode, some people really like the Schwell episode, but from Keke Palmer down all the way to Pedro Pascal is like right up there with some of the highest highs in some of the best seasons of the shows that we have. And I don't really think, and by the way, I didn't mean to leave out Devin also to the show, but I really think that there's a lot of interesting stuff in this season. It's so hard to evaluate a season like this just based on the fact that it just happened. But I was going through the season, I got to cover it week by week, and I just felt like I was having so much fun getting to talk about it. So for me, this was really, really exciting. Steve and Marty, Quinta Brunson, like just a lot of really great episodes. And I think that this one might rise off people's boards as time goes on. So that's why I have to go with season 48 here. Besides 42, it's probably the highest of the 40s for me. So that's my pick. Rebecca, what do you think of that?
Yeah, that would not have come back to you because I would have taken that. I think it's getting me excited about the future of SNL for sure. Like we did have a bunch of just new awesome people. I know we've had multiple discussions about Please Don't Destroy on here too, being able to see them. I really think we are now seeing a turn in the era of what's to come. So definitely an awesome pick. I think this was a super enjoyable season. And yeah, I mean, now I think it stands the time that like, since COVID was simmering down and the world was opening back up, people were still staying home on a Saturday night to watch season 8 is honestly a good testament as to it was so enjoyable that people wanted to keep doing that. And excited for season 49 from what we already saw. So good pick.
Yeah, I'm going to stand by. If we did this draft in 3 or 4 years from now, I think season 48 goes way earlier in this draft. So that's my feelings on it. Sammy, you are up next. You have seasons 32, 15, 4, and 38. So where are you going to go next?
Yeah, I mean, and just to comment on your pick, I mean, I'm glad somebody finally took, a season that we've covered on this podcast, which is very fun. So, all right. I think for my next pick, I'm going with season 23, mainly because I do not have anything from that era at this point, but you have the cast, which, as we've discussed many times throughout this episode, because as other seasons have been picked, Will Ferrell, Anna Gasteyer, Molly Shannon, Sherry O'Terry, Tracy Morgan. Norm's last season as a cast member before he gets fired, towards the end of the season. So obviously that's a pretty notable moment in the show's history. And, I just wanted to have Will Ferrell as a part of my squad, so I had to pick him up here. And I think another thing to note is that, during this time with Sherry O'Terry and Anna Gasteyer and Molly Shannon, this is, a pretty good time for women on SNL for the first time in some time. I mean, obviously we had Jan Hooks and Nora Dunn in the late 80s. And obviously, Gilda, Lorraine, and Jane Curtin in the original cast. So for those reasons, I'm picking season 23.
This is a really interesting season to talk about. I think it's a fascinating view. I don't know that it reaches some of the highs of the rest of the era for me personally, but I think this is a good pick at this point in the draft, Sammy. I think some of the memories that I think of are obviously Chris Farley hosting and then passing not soon after that. Or pretty soon after that. Yeah. So for me, like that is a moment of the season that I think about. Norm Macdonald getting fired after the Christmas show, Jim Downey getting fired as well. I think those are like really iconic moments from like, if you're just going through the history of the show here. So it's an interesting transition point to me when you're talking about that era of the show where it's like, seasons 21 through 23 to me are very different from 24 through 27. And I find it a fascinating watch. Haynes, would love to know what you think about season 23 going here to Sammy.
Yeah, solid pick. Like we said, we're kind of in that zone right now where I don't think we're picking the greatest seasons of all time, but we're not scraping the bottom of the barrel yet. So we're just coming up with like real strong, solid seasons. Family Dinner, great sketch. So yeah, just a square, solid season. I always tell folks, all I want is a square deal in life. I feel like, Sammy, you're offering us a real square deal here with with season 23 with this pick.
Okay. All right. Bill, you have seasons 14, 21, 31, and 41. So where will you go next?
Well, since 51 is not available at this time, I think
11 is available, by the way.
Is it? Didn't know that. I'm going to go back to the original era. I think even though it is not as strong as the first 3 or even 4 seasons, I'm going to go with season 5. It's the last year of the Not Ready for Primetime Players. There's some really good gems in here at this point. We get the last Buck Henry hosted episode, Lord and Lady Douchebag. And even though the show definitely suffers from Dan and Belushi leaving, Garrett gets to shine. Murray and Jane and Gilda and Lorraine are just fantastic, pulling up the reins in this season and being able to do their best with what they had left. You could tell the exhaustion was setting in at this point, but there's still a lot of good stuff, and it's a lot better than a lot of the stuff that's still on the board. So I'm going with 5.
Yeah, I think you could mine for quality here if you wanted to. I mean, like there is things that are interesting, including the fact of how involved the writers get in the sketches. The women of SNL at the time really get their chance to get more involved with Belushi and Aykroyd. Not there. We also get the 100th episode of the show in that celebration. So I think that there are moments here that are worth it. And at this point of the draft, I do think season 5, having an original era season, is a great value. Victoria, what do you think about Bill's pick here since he ripped all of your picks? I'd love to know what you think.
What?
When you put it like that, it just puts salt in the wound. So I'm going to take a step. No, I agree. Gilda Radner, I think this was a great season for her and just for women in comedy in general. Because Bill Murray was coming to an end. I don't know. I agree with Bill.
Very diplomatic of you.
Season 5 is worthy, and I agree with Bill.
Okay. All right, Rebecca, you're going to finish up.
Unenthusiastically. Sorry.
You're going to finish up. No problem. You're going to finish up round 5 of the draft. You have 27 to 37 and 17.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with season 43. I think, I know we're talking about like when we look at like in the 40s, what stands out to us. I was really toying between this and 48, so thanks for making the decision easy, John. I think it was one of the best seasons in recent memories. There was a lot of content with Alec Baldwin and Donald Trump, which I know it did get fatigue, I think, by the end of the season, but it was definitely some comedic relief in a time where we looked at SNL and we kind of need stuff like that. So definitely there was a lot of material for cold opens. I do think like Tom Hanks coming back to host after his first time in 10 years was a really like heartwarming thing. I mean, Tom Hanks is just always gonna put a smile on my face. We have David S. Pumpkins, Black Jeopardy, Dunkin' Donuts, Amazon Echo, and I think, yeah, and then to just round that off with the 43s, the biggest standout moment for this, for me, in the whole bevy of a ton of cold opens is Melissa McCarthy as Sean Spicer. I mean, that kind of never fails for me. So I think that is definitely a standout moment. And in the recent seasons, I would think between like 48 and that 43. So just glad I was able to get this 43.
Yeah, first episode here for Heidi Gardner and Chris Redd, Luke Knoll as well, and yeah, there are some really fun things here. Some things that get passed from season 42 to 43. I do believe that there's like a little bit of a writer purge at some point. I know the head writers changed prior to this season as well, so it's an interesting look back in terms of the quality of the writing. But I do think that there are moments here before it gets too like Trump administration-y. So to me, this is a solid place to pick this season. Sammy, would love to know your thoughts about it going here to Rebecca.
I think this is like the right place for this to go. I mean, you have Mulaney, you have, I think that's the season that Donald Glover hosted as well, which was a pretty big moment. Bill Hader has, to me, a great sketch with the girlfriend's game night when he's, the old guy and in the electric wheelchair. So, and, not to mention, Heidi and Chris Redd, unfortunately Chris has left the show at this point, but, Heidi is still killing it. And I think she kind of came out the gate swinging. So, at this point in the draft, I think this pick makes sense.
Yeah, Heidi also, I should have mentioned, I mean, every boxer's girlfriend ever, whatever the actual name of that, I mean, kind of cemented her. It's just an awesome addition to the cast. And I know even in season 48 and 47, we really got to see her just rise up here. So it was an awesome intro to her, season 43.
Absolutely. All right, we're 5 rounds through the draft. We have limited numbers of seasons left to pick here. So, Rebecca, you're going to start round 6 of the draft as we start to scrape the bottom of the barrel.
Yes. So this is a season, I mean, now I'm hypocritical because this is something that I think could have been a really, really great season if the cast was thinned out here. But it was a super bloated cast, which I know I said I liked, but once I read off some of these people, and I'm not going to even go to all of them because no one wants to hear that, is season 39. Well, there's Vanessa Bayer, 80, Taryn, Kate, Seth, and then Cecily. But then we got Kyle Mooney, Colin Joseph's first season. I know he was very nervous and shaky in the beginning, but it was the start of something beautiful. And I think if this cast was thinned out, we definitely could have ended up really putting this a lot higher. And so I think that's not a bad thing, is to have too many good people. I know we have Do It On My Twin Bed, which is one of my all-time favorites. We have Family Feud, the Kim Ye talk show. There was Jim Parsons, Anna Kendrick, and Andy Samberg hosting here. I do think that this, besides the bloated cast, to call out here is that there was a lot going on with SNL being called out by Jay Farrow and Kenan Thompson to add a Black comic. And the fact that it took their cast members to call that out is obviously something that it's a reason I didn't pick this season earlier. But again, we have to get all the seasons here. So in terms of the sketches and stuff, it's great. And I'm glad that the show was called out. So they added mid-season Sashir Zameda, which was great. It was a great addition to the cast too. But yeah, it was definitely a pivotal time that SNL needed to call itself out and come to that realization and diversify. So with such a bloated cast, not having as much diversity, but then we look at my last pick at 43 when finally we're getting a much more diverse cast of comics there. So I think it was a good moment. It's not the worst pick, not the best pick in around leading off round 6 here.
Yeah, I mean, totally makes sense. I think this is the season that most people will remember for, Beck, Kyle, and, the million new white cast members that they added onto that show. We get the new cast member, Arcade Fire, to start the show. And there are like they are trying things. And I think it is interesting. Obviously, it's not going to work out for a lot of people here on the show. But I think, another moment that people will remember will be Seth Meyers leaving the show and then, starting late night. And we get like Seth's big goodbye, Andy Samberg returning to host the finale. So there are fun moments here that, basically this is a big, big transition season between two important points in the show. So Bill, I'm going to go to you next for your pick. You have season 14, 21, 31, 41, and 5.
Yeah, really getting down to it. I think I'm going to go with a season that's not particularly great, but there are a lot of good things going on, and we bring a couple of iconic cast members in for the first time. I'm going to go with season 28. And we get, this is the first time for Forte and Fred. We get pranksters, we get Colonel Angus, Give Up the Ham. Adam Sandler comes back to the show for the first time, not to host, but to do the cold open for the Hanukkah song. So there's some decent stuff. You can start to see the wear and tear that's going to lead to another change in the show coming up in 29, 30, 31. But you start to see the seeds of what's going to be the next golden era of the show. So I'm going with 28.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, like you said, Will Forte, Fred Armisen join the show. That's definitely interesting for people who, of a certain generation know them and know that they're going to be iconic cast members that will be on the show for a long time. Downside, no more Will Ferrell on the show, so that's something to think about there. And then Dan Aykroyd returning to the show, I think, is just like a really memorable moment from that season. So, matching up with your 14, 21, 31, 41, 5, and now 28, I think you have some diversity in terms of like chronologically the seasons make sense here, Bill. Next up, Sammy Kay. You have seasons 32, 15, 4, 38, and 23. So would love to know where you are going to go with your 6th pick.
Yeah, I mean, really getting into the weeds here. So, there's a lot of different places I can go, but I think I'm going to go with season 40. I'm going with season 40 of SNL. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I think there are some memorable sketches in here for me. Mainly the Lincoln car commercial with Jim Carrey. That is one that I quoted with my friends a ton when this came out. The Jay-Z story, the Mike O'Brien pre-tape where Jason Sudeikis comes back for a surprise cameo. That is one that I rewatch all the time. And, obviously we have Michael Che and Colin Jost, starting their 10-year update. So that is kind of a notable thing as well. Sarah Silverman comes back to host, which, for somebody who used to be a cast member on the show, for her to come back was a big deal. And SNL 40, which was a huge celebration of the show's history, happens during the season. I'm not sure if that exactly counts towards the pick, but I think it is certainly something to note. You can tell that throughout the year they're kind of celebrating the show, even outside of the anniversary special itself. So I'm going with SNL 40 here.
Yeah, I mean, 40th season of the show, huge celebration, the biggest celebration in the show's history. I know that's not canonically part of the season, but it still is a celebration. You mentioned Jay and Jost and them trying to put things together, Bill Hader returning to the show. So there are moments here that I think are really interesting as well. So that makes sense for you, Sammy, to add season 40 to your list of 32, 15, 4, 38, and 23. Up next is me. I'm going to pick my season, my 6th season on my list, and I have 34, 12, 22, 35, and 48. I'm really surprised the season lasted so long to me. Like, this is a season that's like still pretty high up on my board. I guess it falls down on people's viewing because it's a strike season, but I'm going to go with season 33 here. Still has that iconic cast. there are still moments that I think are really interesting to talk about. Obviously, like, you know, when you get into these strike seasons, like we talked about with 13, there's like a lot of like what if questions. But like I remember watching this like in the real time. I think LeBron hosting the show was like a really fun moment. John Bon Jovi hosting, and that being like a really big show for Amy Poehler was really fun. And then the Brian Williams episode, who I actually got to cover that episode with Andrew Dick on his podcast. We had a lot of fun talking about that one. And then you get this like huge break before the show comes back. And it comes back with Tina Fey and Carrie Underwood. And that's like a very memorable episode. Christopher Walken's going to host for his last time. And Steve Carell and Usher on the show to finish off the season. So I think there's still like some really fun moments here. There's some iconic digital shorts as well. And some like, you know, fun cast members doing some great things, including we get the premiere of Scared Straight. That was a sketch that I was thinking about. So for me, season 33 is the one that I have to add to my list, even though I have 34 and 35. So people have to, you have to love that era to love what I'm doing here.
Jesus, John.
I didn't try and do that, but it just happened. So that's the way it goes. All right. Well, Andrew, this is a really interesting pick for you because it's actually going to be your last pick because you ended up with the 6th season penalty, I guess. So you have 24, 42, 16, 8, and 13. And let me just read off what's left on the board for you to pick from. So
I know what I got.
I know, but I want the listeners to know what you have left to pick from, if that's okay. So chronologically, the seasons that are left to pick from: 6, 9, 11, 19, 20, 44, 45, 46, and 47. So where will you go?
All right. And I knew this wouldn't ever be taken. So I knew it was going to be my last choice. 6th round. I only have 6 choices. I got to go with season 6. I love season 6. It's long thought of to be one of the worst seasons of all time. I feel that is a bunch of hooey. It's also a strike season, so we can also bounce against your 33 there. But no, I feel like I love this cast. I love Gail Mathias. I love Danny Dillon. I love Gilbert Gottfried on the show. Charles Rocket has his moments for sure. Joe Piscopo coming out and just like, oh my God, like just killing it. And I mean, just so many good episodes. I think if you get past the first 2 outings with Elliot Gould and Malcolm McDowell, you're basically in good hands. You got Ellen Burstyn, I think, is a really underrated episode. Jamie Lee Curtis, Ray Sharkey, the Karen Black episode, I Don't Care What You Say, is a classic. So is Bill Murray returning for the first time to host. And even Dick Ebersol's, first episode coming back, that's also in the midst of a strike, is also really fascinating. And again, the music is killer. Captain Beefheart, Aretha Franklin, James Brown, the cast of Pirates of Penzance, Cheap Trick. Season 6 is so good,
Prince.
And I knew people weren't going to pick it, but I hold that one in my heart. I really feel like people still need to go back out there and reevaluate it because it does not deserve the flack it gets. It still continues to get. It's not deserved. It's a very great season.
Yeah, I actually don't think this is the worst season in the Ebersol era. I think that there's moments that are really fascinating to watch here. Also, like iconic musicians, Prince as well was on this, yes. And it's like just a very weird season in terms of the fact that you just have like new cast members, like just like change over between episodes 12 and 13. We have Bill Murray return to the show. We have like a pseudo Chevy hosted episode that I think is actually a really fun episode, the last episode of the season. Even the Elliot Gould episode I think is really interesting to watch. And so to me, there's moments here that I think are worthy of it not being like last pick of the draft or anything like that. I think that there's definitely stuff to talk about here.
I just knew I was going to be the only one that took it. So, I was fine to let it just hang there. I knew I was going to be the one. So. Yeah.
And you ended up with 6 and 8. So two Ebersol seasons. Makes sense for you.
Yes. Well, no, 6 is mostly Gene.
I guess true. Yeah. Yes. 2 non-Lauren seasons, I guess.
Yes.
That is true. All right, Haynes, you have 3, 10, 1, 36, and 25. So where will you go next?
I'm taking my big stride into the 40s, and I'm going with number 47. So this was I thought a pretty good season. And I mean, we had the Science Room sketch with Jason Sudeikis, which obviously is kind of became an instant classic with his amazing improv during that sketch. We've got John Mulaney joining the Five Timers Club, which happens so rapidly, but well deserved for that talent. And just, I think a pretty solid season with, the choices that are left.
For sure. I mean, I had this one. This is like a top 50% of the series like season for me. Like this is still like probably like somewhere in the half range for me, but it's my highest one left on my board. So this makes sense for this pick. Haynes, JJ and Sarah, we get to meet them. The season kicks off with JJ playing the president, which is like iconic and such an important moment. Kim Kardashian hosting the show was like huge for a lot of people. Pete, then the whole storyline between Pete and Kim K. People remember Jason Sudeikis returning to the show, the Omicron episode. I just felt like there was storyline after storyline. Will Forte finally hosting the show, and Mulaney's Five Timers Club. Like, just to me, there was, even though maybe the quality wasn't nearly as high as season 48 for me, the storylines week after week getting to cover the seasons was just incredible to do. So it was fun getting to do that with you, Haynes, and I'm happy that you picked it.
Plus Conan O'Brien making an appearance in that Five Timers Club sketch. You gotta shout that out.
Absolutely. All right, Victoria, you're going to have back-to-back picks here. So you're going to pick the end of season, the end of round 6, and then you're going to start the final round of the draft. So these are your last 2 picks. Give us your first one.
My last 2 that I had that I felt semi-passionate about was 47. So thanks, Haynes. And I want to add something to that too. I think that 47 was, the first season where it really showed that SNL is looking to its future audience. And, how are we going to pass the torch? It's not just the older folks who love Chevy Chase and, all the iconic stuff. Is we need to bring in this younger audience, and having Kim K there, and just a diverse hosting, someone like a Kim K, but then some SNL icons like Sudeikis and Will Forte, but then there's a Gerard Carmichael who's very interesting, but then you have Billie Eilish. I just think they did such a wonderful job rounding those hosts out and looking to the future. So I think that was a great one, Haynes. But I think my choice is going to be season 45. I know that's an interesting one because it was semi-cut short because of COVID, and there are all those episodes that took place at home. It was kind of rough, but I think given the circumstances, they did a great job. You're not able to literally talk to anybody else in that time, so under those circumstances, I think the content was great. Like Kate McKinnon's RBG was awesome. I think the Let Kids Drink was funny. But there were, having Harry Styles host was awesome. And Will Ferrell was a nice choice. And then, of course, there's the John Mulaney. But I think having Eddie Murphy come back, and, I think that was the first time in a long time the thought of SNL and Eddie Murphy came to anyone's mind, and reintroduce Mr. Robinson to us, and bringing back and reprising Gumby and Velvet Jones and all that. So if I think that was it's a great season.
Yeah, that is I think the best pick on the board right now was season 45. Mm-hmm. So you get to meet Chloe and Bowen. Eddie Murphy hosting in that season, I think boosts that season up tremendously. And then the at-home shows, I mean, it's so hard to judge the quality compared to the rest of the series, but the fact that they're there, it just creates this level of oh, what is this? This is something we've never seen before. So I think for me, it is definitely one to recommend here. Okay, mm-hmm. 6 picks left to finish off the draft. So curious which one will be the last one selected. So, Victoria, you're going to go next with our final pick, the first pick in the final round of the draft. Go ahead.
All right. I'm going to choose one that kind of beats a dead horse, but given the options left, I'm going to go with season 20. So after Dana Carvey's departure, I think SNL was trying to figure out what its next steps were going to be, though they still had the stellar cast, including Farley, Sandler, Spade, Franken, McDonald, etc. They did bring back a lot of old characters. Matt Foley, they tried that again. Stuart what is
Smalley.
it called? Yeah, Stuart Smalley was brought back too. So, I mean, it was with what under the circumstances, I think it did pretty good because looking at the cast, they were trying to fill some holes, but they didn't want to take away from who was still there. So, I think it was great. And then, of course, you have UFO Mission that comes out of that, where we see Farley letting his pants, come down while he climbs into a spaceship. So, and then you have the Hanukkah song as well.
All I could say, Victoria, is that you're good enough, you're smart enough, and doggone it, people like you. So I hope they like your pick. Okay, so Victoria rounds out her team with 18, 7, 26, 30, 29, 45, and 20. That is her team. She will tell you why that one should be picked later on when we wrap up the draft. So Haynes, you have 3, 10, 1, 36, 25, and 47, and you have one of 5 seasons left to pick.
Yeah, so we are really getting down to it, aren't we? Oh gosh, and I didn't mark off season 5. Bill took that. Okay.
Yeah, do you want to tell you what's left?
No, I got it. I'm gonna just stay right in the 40s and go with season 44. I still think Bathroom Bodega is the best John Mulaney musical of them all. It stands at the top for me. Joke swap. Anytime we get a joke swap, love that. That's quality content. Yeah, so that's what's floating. My very last pick, I guess, is that kind of material. 44.
Okay. Well, Egil Wodum joins the show here. We get Seth Meyers hosting. There's a lot of Robert De Niro and Ben Stiller. Like, this is like probably the peak outside casting coming in. But Adam Sandler hosting the show. I mean, that was definitely worth the price of admission just to be able to check out that season. So I could see why you picked it.
Yeah, I'll just add that, I think this was this the first year that no. The first year that you started this network we started 45,
46.
right?
46.
46? Oh gosh. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. But what I was going to get to was, yeah, it is stacked with lots of guest appearances, and maybe this kind of started to give way to that argument that was very much thriving, in full by the time we were doing the podcast about, I had not been on social media in 10 years, and I joined because of the podcast, and I made my Twitter handle, or my X handle now, SNL has a cast, because it just felt like, someone needed to say, and people were like, hey, they're cast members. It's as big as the cast has ever been, and yet we have more cameo appearances than ever before. So this, kind of started that era, it does feel like. But listen, it's not a bad season. I really don't think there's any horrible season of SNL. Every season obviously has hit or miss points. And I know, listen, Andy Dick made his argument for 6. Someone's going to have to make an argument for 11 sooner here or later. But
hey, listen, I can also make an argument for 11.
Sure.
Honestly.
Well, I'm leaving my argument at 44.
Fair enough. Well, in case you forgot, Andrew Dick has picked his entire team already. He has 24, 42, 16, 8, 13, and 6, which will send it over to me.
Not bad.
Yeah, where I have 34, 12, 22, 35, 48, and 33. Now I wish that I had 6 picks, because I don't want to add one of these seasons to my list.
I'm the winner!
Yeah, you may have. This actually may have been the best thing for you. But so I'm picking between 9, 11, 19, and 46. And I think out of those seasons, though I got to cover 46 and I did have fun with it, I think I'm going to go with 19 here. I think that's the best season left on the board.
Why is season 9 getting no love? This makes no sense to me.
I'm gonna go with season 19 here for me. I think to me, like if I'm picking between like casts that are left here, I'm gonna pick the one with Phil Hartman still in the cast. Like to me, the GOAT, like you gotta have him there. There's still some really interesting sketches. I do think like this is the point where we start to see that like Sandler and Farley and Spade start to take over the show. But we get to meet Norm Macdonald. We get to meet Sarah Silverman and Jay Moore on the show. Like, I think there's like fun things that happen in this season. And like the John Malkovich episode, I think is a really interesting one as well. Nicole Kidman's episode, I remember that one. So Alec Baldwin hosting with Kim Basinger at the time was fun. A lot of people do remember how iconic the Nancy Kerrigan episode, which is actually, I believe, like in the top 10 of most watched episodes in the history of SNL. So like there are moments here that I think are worth talking about. And for that reason, I'm going to go with 19 to round out my team here. So my final team is 34, 12, 22, 35, 48, and season 19. Sammy, you have 32, 15, 4, 38, 23, and 40. So you have the choice between 9, 11, and 46.
I'm going to choose season 9, just to make Andrew Dick happy. You know, you still have an iconic sketch with the James Brown hot tub party sketch. You have the Don Rickles hosted episode, which, you know, his monologue from that episode, super iconic. I believe Robin Williams is also a host in this episode, who, you know, one of my favorite, you know, comedians of all time. And Jim Belushi joins the show, which, you know, obviously brother to John Belushi, and he brings, you know, something interesting to the cast there as well. So despite the fact that, you know, we kind of lose Eddie halfway through, I think, you know, I'm glad I ended up with this one and not the other ones that are left on the board.
Yeah, look, this makes sense. I mean, we're talking about some of the seasons that were left to us here. And I think like part of the reason naturally is like if Eddie was not transitioning out of the season, it changes everybody's view of the season. The fact that he pre-recorded sketches at the beginning of the season and then they're played throughout is like sort of a big deal. I think Jim Belushi has moments and I think he's an underrated cast member, but I think that like he definitely has like a little bit of a rough start to try and figure out his way onto this season. And then I think like, yeah, there are a few iconic moments here. You mentioned some of the hosts. I think the fact that we had 5 hosts for the season finale is something that's like so fascinating to get to talk about. So probably bottom of the barrel for the non-Lorne years for me, but that makes sense why it's taking here third to last in the draft. Okay, Bill, you have the choice here. You have the final pick of the draft because the last one is going to end up with Rebecca. So you have the choice between season 11 and season 46. So tell us why you will pick that final season to join 14, 21, 31, 41, 5, and 28.
Well, this is a no-brainer for what's left. Have to go with the SNL stat year, as it's known, season 46. I mean, this if you're going to look at it, this is one of those seasons that's such a time capsule. It's going to be something that we look back on with no audience, and then half an audience, and then just kind of feeling their way through, never knowing if every week was going to be canceled. I remember how many times we talked about that leading up to a podcast that week. And all the British hosts, the strange choice of doing all these British hosts that probably wouldn't have been picked most seasons. But yeah, and then, I mean, obviously you get Dismukes and Funky for the first time. You get Strollin, New York Musical, Driver's License. So, I mean, there are some really good things here. And we will probably look back on this as one of those seasons that led into the next really great era with the pieces starting to fall into place as older cast members left. So got to go with 46.
Yeah, again, I mean, the SNL stats era, we got to cover this in real time. It was such a weird start to the podcast in the fall where we were talking about how these like episodes are going to be iconic and always remembered for being the pandemic season, and it just like you said, Bill, it just transitions forward and starts to like things just start to get a little bit more normal as we get through the season. I do think there's some stuff after the new year. I think they did 6 episodes after the new year. I think towards that end of that run with like the Reggae Sean Page episode, the Dan Levy episode, like I think there's like some ones there, the Nick Jonas episode, I think those ones that are like interesting there at least to talk about. I think besides the pandemic season, the fact that Elon Musk hosted the season, not because of necessarily Elon outside of the show, but just even the episode itself, like I think that probably like knocks us down on a lot of people's pegs as well. But like I said, like in real time, it was just interesting to get to follow the show as it started to return back to normal, and we got to see the uptick in its quality into 47 and then 48, which I think ended up being a very good season of the show. So Rebecca, you landed with season 11. So you started with 27 to 37,
Yes.
17, 43, and season 39. Anything redeemable you would like to say about season 11 that landed to you?
Well, no, but okay. Here's the thing. If Lauren didn't come back and have a flop of a season, then like he probably wouldn't be motivated to keep going, you know? Like he came back. I mean, that's pretty like historical from that standpoint, I guess. Like from season 11, I mean, but it was a whole lot of just bad. It was not good. As Madonna said, and I quote from the start of season 12, it was, she said, Anita, it was all a dream. It was all a dream. And that's what it felt like to everyone here. It was not great, but you have to fall before you can get back up and climb. So it was pivotal for that. I do think Andrew got the best spot from that random draft for not having to get stuck with the pick here. But whatever, it's iconic. People are still talking about it. So you'll remember it for sure.
Yeah,
But
someone
And
should.
like I said, I could provide a defense for season 11.
All
I
right.
honestly could.
Why don't you do it? And
Do it.
and yeah, somebody should have jumped at the opportunity to take the 6 seasons. So Andrew, why is season 11 better than the last pick in the draft?
Well, I mean, the Francis Ford Coppola George Wendt with Philip Glass. I mean, again, that is a top 5 episode. And honestly, I think a lot of the rest of the shows are not as bad as you think they would be. They're just very languid. But there are good pieces in there. I mean, it's basically the same writers that go on to do season 12, season 13, season 14, season 15. It is the base of that era. It's just all a little bit wrong, but I still, despite how he is these days, I like Randy Quaid as a performer on SNL. To be honest, I think Robert Downey Jr. has his moments. I think the only person that really sticks out as a really sore thumb is Anthony Michael Hall. But I think there's a lot to be enjoyed in that season if you will allow yourself to enjoy it. So I can see why it was the last one picked. But, much like season 7, I do kind of defend it as something. There's more under the hood than you think there is.
Okay. Well, that does it for all of our picks of the draft. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go around the table. We are going to have each of our panelists pitch you, the listener, about why their team is the best, their team of seasons that they put together. At the same time, I'll also ask you for any plugs you have going on so the listeners can check you out or anything you have that's happening. So, Victoria, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This was so much fun getting to have you on a draft podcast with us again. So, tell us why your seasons that you picked were the best.
Oh man. Well, I have a great variety of picks here. Something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. Going through each season, like I said, season 18 was Chris Farley's Matt Foley motivational speaker. And I think that's all I have to say to justify that pick. You have season 7, which is Eddie Murphy's foundation to his quintessential comedic career and being a staple in comedy and inspiring other greats as well. Season 26, you have some of SNL's most notable sketches coming out of there, like Love Us or, Jeffries and Celebrity Jeopardy, Nick Burns' Computer Guy, and then having Tina Fey, an important comedian for my generation, especially for women, joining the cast for the first year and really just blazing a new trail after that for women in comedy. Season 29, you have more notable and influential sketches like Cork Soakers, Debbie Downer at Disney World, and the Barry Gibb Talk Show. 30, a great extension to 29. And then you have 45, which showed the show's strength, the cast strength and the whole crew's strength in pivoting into an uncharted territory with COVID and really handling, what to do when you're not allowed to be in contact with anybody else, and what are you going to do alone, and still providing great solo content. While it's not the best SNL has ever seen, it is quite impressive given their circumstances. And then, last but not least, season 20 with, even though it was a restructuring year for them, it had a solid cast with Hollywood's greatest stars and folks that everyone knows and loves. Again, with Farley, Sandler, Norm Macdonald. And then a fun call out that I didn't point out earlier is that it had, I don't know how to say the last name, so correct me, please. It had Tim Hurley. Martin Hurley's of
Hurley.
One more time.
Hurley.
Martin's of Martin of Please and Don't Destroy His Dad.
Let's give the boy a job.
as a writer, and then came Martin. So shout out to Tim for that. But I think I have a lot going on. I have a lot of things that will span across generations that are incredibly solid. And as we look to the future, a lot of this is a great foundation for anybody who wants to start watching Saturday Night Live who hasn't before.
Well, thank you, Victoria, for that. And where can the listeners check you out?
All right. You can find me on Instagram. If you are in the Metro Detroit area, I am performing at Go Comedy this Saturday at 7:30 and 9:30. And then after that, you can find me at the Second City on Mondays in October and November in the ETC Theater. I will be performing. And then after that, news to come.
So
dealing with SNL. So.
Oh my God.
I know.
Yeah, very excited. So looking forward to discussing that with you and having you on again sometime soon. Bearded Man, Haynes. So the magical Mr. Haynes, you finished with some really fun seasons to talk about. So tell the listeners why they are the best.
Thanks. Is there something in my beard? Do you guys see? Is there like a little thing here? I'm like, I can't. I feel like
on the other side, you got a little
doesn't it
white piece.
Yeah, it's called swag.
Yeah.
It's called Riz.
I don't know what those things mean.
Jon Schneider rizzed up the magical Mr. Haynes?
So, listen, defending my picks. Listen, I got a lot of strong picks here, all right? We got the wild and crazy guys. We got Nick the Lounge Singer. We've got I come out hot with the very first season. That's as iconic as it gets. With season 10, I've got an Eddie Murphy season. We've got John. What
do you have an Eddie Murphy season with season 10?
Yeah, season 10 is not an Eddie Murphy season.
Yeah, you're right. And then John, what are the rest of my picks? 36, 47, 44.
Okay, you want to take it over?
310-1. Okay, 36.
Leave it in.
36, 25, 47, and 44.
25.
Would you like me to tee you up again?
No.
Okay. This is going to be great.
Leave all this in.
Okay, go
Don't
ahead.
edit any of it. So we got 36, 25, 47, 44. Listen, I stand by my first three picks.
All right. Is that it?
That's it. That's all I got.
Okay, where can the listeners check you out, Haynes?
They're not checking me out anywhere. I'm not telling anybody where I am.
Ooh, I'm checking you out, baby.
Yeah, just right here. It's the only place you'll find me.
Sounds good to me. Well, always happy to have you on here. Andrew Dick, thanks for joining us, bud. Tell the listeners why your seasons are the best.
Oh my God, because they are the best, except for the couple that Haynes took for me right out the jump. And I'm mad at him for that. But, beyond that, I think, we got 6. That's classic Andrew Dick BS. I'm always on my season 6 rants. Also on my Ebersol. So season 8, that's the Ebersol ear clicking. at its best. Got to get some of that early 80s or like mid late 80s stuff in there. So season 13 I feel is a strong candidate in there. Season 24, that means a lot to me personally. That's where I came in watching the show. I missed season 16 also. That was another choice where I feel like, that again, we talk about the bloat that comes into the mid 90s, but I feel like that's the bloat working at its best. Everybody's coming in hot, ready to do their thing. And so season 16 works because of that. And season 42, which, I was back watching the show, and it was nice to see, like, hey, people like the show again. Like, I don't have to feel embarrassed to say that I'm watching SNL. So, I think that's only six choices. But I feel they're all strong ones. And even if I was allowed to survive to the final round, I could have gotten season 9 in there or season 11, which I would, I'd argue for both. So, and you can hear me argue for all seasons that are on SNL, Vintage SNL, that week in SNL. You know where to find us. Talking old episodes. We're about to come back. I don't know if SNL itself will, but we will. And we still got the Patreon cooking right now, finishing up our journey through the Richard Pryor show. We're about to talk about the recently unearthed episodes of Turn On. So if anybody knows what Turn On is and wants to hear some folks talk about it and try and make sense of this, 1969 sketch show that was canceled halfway through its first episode airing, we're going to be doing that very soon. So lots of things going on at That Week in SNL. Vote for me!
Yes, make sure you turn on That Week in SNL. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Andrew. So my seasons here, 34, 12, 22, 35, 48, 33, and 19. So let's go through the obvious here. I have 33, 34, and 35. So if you like that third golden era, we're clicking on all cylinders here, especially with season 34, which has to be one of the more iconic seasons in the history of the show. I think it's a GOAT season, that is for sure. Season 12 as well also kicks off the second golden era. We get to meet these cast members that are forever ingrained in SNL history with some really fun sketches. I think season 22 is a really fun season. Like I said, I mean, maybe it's not for everybody, but the return of former cast members hosting back to back, some really good moments. The getting to meet Anna Gasteyer and Tracy Morgan on the show is really cool. So for me, loving those picks that I ended up with. I also took season 48, which was the most recent season of the show that I think will be remembered very fondly in the future for just having a really great run, probably the hottest run in the show in about 6 years. So I think that's important. And I ended up with season 19 at the end, which to me is like not one of the worst seasons in the history of the show. I think there are moments, the fact that you still have Phil on the show is really strong. And there are some really interesting moments in 19. So very happy with my team here, and I hope that you do vote for it. I will plug the Saturday Night Network after we get to our next three. So Sammy, over to you for your picks and where people can check you out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm elated over here because I ended up with season 32, which is, the season of SNL that got me into the show, that made me a fan. It has those iconic cast members, Andy Samberg, Kristen Wiig, Jason Sudeikis, Bill Hader, Seth Meyers, and Amy Poehler on Weekend Update. And that's just like that era at its best. And obviously the SNL digital shorts from that season are iconic. Dick in the Box. And then Dear Sister as well. And then my second pick, season 15, the second golden era of the show, Phil Hartman, Dana Carvey, Kevin Nealon, Jan Hooks, all of that cast, just kind of picking up where they with season 14. And you have the debuts of hosts like John Goodman, Alec Baldwin, and Christopher Walken for the last season with John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd. So you're able to kind of see, the not ready for primetime players kind of all, together under one roof for one kind of last season. You have, kind of epic sketches that they were starting to do around that time, like the Pepsi Syndrome, which is really interesting to check out, and episodes, hosted by Carrie Fisher, Steve Martin, and Buck Henry. You got season 38, which I think is one of the best sort of mixed eras cast, seasons of the show where you have, the veterans with Bill Hader, Jason Sudeikis, and Fred Armisen bringing in the new cast of Kate McKinnon, Cecily Strong, and that era of the show, and some classic sketches from those veterans like Puppet Class. Then you have season 23. I needed to have a Will Ferrell era season, on my list here. And you have some pretty iconic stuff happening with, Norm Macdonald getting fired. You have people like Steve Buscemi hosting, Sylvester Stallone, the infamous Chris Farley hosted episode. And to round out my list, season 9, Eddie Murphy is part of this season, which makes it a good pick, even if he's not in it for, majority of the season. Plus that Don Rickles monologue still holds up to this day. So I think if you were to watch, my seasons, you see a pretty, strong through line from the beginning of the show, from that not ready for primetime players era, all the way to SNL 40. So I think that did I not mention SNL 40 on my breakdown here?
You did now.
Yeah, and then to round it out, you also have SNL 40, which celebrates 40 years of the show with some pretty great hosted episodes. So that's my list.
Awesome, Sammy. Where can the listeners check you out?
You guys can find me here at the Saturday Night Network on the Superfan Takeover shows. We do a bunch of drafts like this. Most recently, as John mentioned, we did the One Hit Wonder draft. And if you guys have any ideas for potential episodes in the future, please hit me up on Instagram and Twitter at Sammy Kay.
Awesome. Bill, so great to have you on another draft. I hope you feel like you did well because you have some really fun seasons to talk about. So tell the listeners why they should vote for you.
Yes, well, I have from the very beginning of the golden era, the first golden era of SNL, all the way through the SNL stats golden era of season 46. I've got season 14, which many consider to be the greatest season of SNL history. The first season of Will Ferrell in season 21, through Forte and Fred in season 31, and then season 41, which has the last great cast gelling together right before the middle of last decade. So vote for me. You can follow me at BKLove73.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bill. And last but not least, Rebecca, you got to tell us why your team is the best.
Yeah, you should vote for me for 7 reasons. Season 2, 27, 37, 17, 39, 43, and I'm really fun. And I also have season 11. For season 2, it brought structure to the show. I mean, SNL's the way it is now because of season 2. Season 11, Lauren's back. That's very exciting. It's a pivotal time, and it's honestly iconic. Maybe for the wrong reasons, but aren't a lot of people iconic for the wrong reasons. Season 17, we have got the bad boys taking over. Sandler, Chris Rock, Farley, Spade. Season 27, there's Will Ferrell, plus Tina Fey, Maya Rudolph, Rachel Dratch, and Amy Poehler were all promoted to series regulars. So I think that was an awesome time and a big transitional period. Season 37, I mean, it's the debut of Drunk Uncle and the Californians. We welcome Kate McKinnon and we say goodbye to Andy Samberg and Kristen Wiig. So I've got another transitional period there into a newer era. We have season 39. It's a massive, massive cast, which is really, really exciting going into the Mikey Day, Beck Bennett era. And yeah, you kind of can't miss with a cast like that. And then rounding it off was season 43 with Alec Baldwin coming in as Trump for a bunch of awesome cold opens. And then we saw David S. Pumpkins, Black Jeopardy, such a strong host era from the 40s. So definitely vote for me. You can find me anywhere, any social media. So Instagram, Twitter, probably my biggest, at @barbecue. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys on the Saturday Night Network soon.
Absolutely. Well, listeners, if you enjoyed this draft, you got to tell us what you thought of it. So either post your comments in the YouTube chat, either live with us watching this through or below the video after the fact to tell us who won the draft. We're also going to be posting the the results on social media over the next, we'll give it a few days, basically, not to spoil the show, and then we'll post this. And we want to know who won the draft. So you got to vote for your favorite group of seasons put together by these iconic podcasters. So I so appreciate all of our listeners checking this out on Labor Day at the end of the long weekend. I hope this was a very fun way to spend the end of your long weekend. And we always appreciate feedback, and star ratings and reviews really help at this time, especially during the SNL off season. So make sure to do that. Also subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. You can follow us on social media at the SNL Network on Facebook, Twitter/X, TikTok, and Instagram to see everything that we're up to. And as for what's coming next on the Saturday Night Network, we're planning some really fun things for the fall, assuming that SNL is not back. And then when SNL decides to finally come back, we have so much content ready to go for you. So I'm so excited to break it down with all of these great personalities among our many others here on the show. We're giddy and ready to go whenever the strikes are resolved and everybody gets their fair due. So looking forward to that. Otherwise, check our social media for upcoming podcast schedule and new shows. Okay, so on behalf of Victoria, Haynes, Andrew Dick, Sammy, Bill Kenney, and Rebecca North, my name is Jon Schneider from the Saturday Night Network, and we will see you next time, everybody. Have a good one.